Tonight we begin in the year 1929, under the hard light of southern Iraq. A British archaeologist named Leonard Woolley is cutting down through the ancient soil of Ur. Layer after layer, his team finds graves, pottery, ash, beads, and the quiet evidence of vanished hands. Then, beneath the royal tombs, they reach a clean band of water-laid silt. It is not a wall, it is not a floor, it is a silence in the earth. For a moment, it seems as though the land itself has paused between two memories. Above that layer are traces of city life, metalwork, seals, burials, and written culture. Below it are older traces, humbler and deeper, belonging to people before the great cities. Woolley believed he had found evidence of a vast flood remembered in ancient tradition. Modern scholars are more cautious, as they should be, because caution is archaeology's better angel. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania, which supported Woolley's expedition, treat the discovery as important but complex. Oxford historians also remind us that flood layers can be local, dramatic, and still powerful. Tonight, we're not trying to prove that Sumerians predicted laptops, satellites, or pocket screens. That would be too easy, and honestly, too loud for a sleeping mind. Instead, you're stepping into a softer question. What if ancient Sumerian prophecy preserved something subtler than a list of future inventions? What if it preserved the feeling of technology before technology had its modern name? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the nights settle around you, tell us where you're listening from and what your local time is. The old clay has waited longer than any of us. You find yourself standing on a wide plain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The air is dry, warm, and faintly bitter with dust. A low wind moves over reed beds, mud brick walls, and irrigation channels shining like dull bronze. The sky's enormous! It presses down gently, blue by day and black by night, filled with stars that feel strangely close. Your sandals sink slightly into packed earth near a canal. You smell river mud, animal sweat, date palm, and smoke from cooking fires. Somewhere nearby, a scribe presses a reed stylus into damp clay. The marks are small, angled, and patient. They look like scratches at first, but they are not scratches. They are memory becoming physical. Records confirm that by the late 4th millennium before the Common Era, southern Mesopotamians used written signs for administration. At first, writing was not poetry, prophecy, or royal boasting. It was counting. It was grain, sheep, jars of oil, labourers, rations, fields, and offerings. Human civilization, in its first written breath, appears to be doing inventory. There is a gentle comedy in that. Before kings carved their names into stone, someone was worried about barley. Yet that practical world is where the mystery begins. Because once a culture learns to record, it also learns to compare. Once it compares, it begins to notice patterns. Once it notices patterns, it begins to wonder whether the future is written somewhere. Perhaps in the stars, perhaps in oil poured into water, perhaps in dreams before dawn, when the body is still but the mind wanders. The Sumerians and their Mesopotamian heirs did not see prophecy as a stage trick. They saw signs as part of a living order, a storm, an eclipse, a strange birth, or a king's dream could mean something. Not always something simple, not always something comforting. Still, meaning was sought. That is one of the oldest human technologies. The tool is not bronze as stone or silicon. The tool is pattern. Ancient tablets still carry those early attempts. Some list offerings to gods while others record fields, labour, and temple accounts. Some preserve myths of creation, kingship, divine decisions, and floods. A scholar at Yale might describe such texts as evidence of learned divination. A curator at the British Museum might call them archives of elite knowledge. They are ancient attempts to make the universe answer back. A quirky fringe tidbit often wanders into this story wearing a shiny hat. Some modern writers claim the Sumerians described advanced machines or hidden devices from forgotten visitors. The evidence does not allow us to state that as fact. Still, the rumour persists because the old texts feel unusually technical at times. They speak of divine decrees, Measured heavens, ordered cities, and tablets of destiny. It can sound almost bureaucratic. The cosmos, in these stories, is not a wild dream. It has ranks, functions, commands, boundaries, and permissions. Open scholarly debate still surrounds how we should read these materials. Some specialists see temple myths mainly as religious literature and political theology. Others emphasize social organization, environmental pressure, and economic management. A few scholars ask whether myth sometimes preserves memories of real cultural transitions. No serious historian needs to turn Sumer into science fiction to feel wonder here. The wonder is already present. A society builds canals to command water. It invents writing to command memory. It studies the heavens to command uncertainty. And in that slow accumulation, you sense the first faint outline of modern technology. Not gadgets, not screens, not humming servers and cold rooms. Technology begins as a promise whispered to chaos. It says, perhaps we can measure you. Perhaps we can store you. Perhaps we can predict you. Perhaps we can make tomorrow less frightening than yesterday. The Sumerian world is far from peaceful. Floods come. Fields dry. Cities compete. Kings boast. Temples gather wealth. Yet inside that struggle, the clay tablets keep accumulating. One impression after another. Each mark is small, but together they become a second landscape. A landscape made of signs. You look down at a tablet resting in a scribe's palm. It is no larger than a modern phone, which is a comparison too tempting to ignore. Both are silent until someone knows how to read them. Of course, one is clay, and the other glows with impossible light. But the human desire beneath them is strangely familiar. Ancient Sumer may not have predicted modern technology, but it understood the hunger that creates it. The hunger to extend memory beyond the body. The hunger to make the invisible visible. The hunger to ask the future for permission before stepping into it. As the sun lowers over the plain, the mud brick walls turn amber. Smoke lifts from the city in pale ribbons. You feel the evening coolness touch your face, faint and brief. Somewhere in a temple courtyard, a priest watches the sky darken. Somewhere in a tablet room, a scribe leaves wet clay to dry. And somewhere deeper, beneath floors, tombs, and flood silt. The older earth keeps its own account. Perhaps the prophecy was never a single sentence. Perhaps it was a habit of seeing. Perhaps every mark in clay was a small rehearsal for the modern world. The night gathers slowly over Sumer, and the stars begin their ancient work. They do not explain themselves. They only shine. You move deeper into the southern plain, where the cities rise from mud and intention. They do not rise suddenly. Nothing ancient and important ever seems to arrive in a hurry. A wall begins as packed earth, then becomes a boundary, then becomes a promise. A canal begins as a cut in the soil, then becomes a vein through a thirsty world. A city begins as a cluster of shelters, then becomes a machine made of people. Uruk appears first as distance, then as colour, then as weight. Its mud brick walls stand beneath the broad Mesopotamian sky, sun-baked and weather-marked. Reed boats move along the water, their hulls brushing against banks thick with silt. You hear donkeys braying, potters turning clay, and sandals scraping over dry streets. The smell is layered and human. There is bread smoke, fish, dung fuel, river mud, wool, beer mash, and hot dust. This is not a clean museum world behind glass. It breathes, it sweats, it bargains with the sun. Archaeological work at Uruk has shown that by the late 4th millennium before the Common Era, the settlement had become one of the earliest large urban centres. Researchers at the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute, now known as the Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures, helped shape modern understanding of this urban explosion. They studied the temples, tablets, seals, and artifacts that reveal something larger than simple village life. Here, you are not watching people merely survive. You are watching them organise complexity. That word sounds modern, almost too tidy for a city of mud, brick and reed. Yet complexity is exactly what surrounds you. There are workers, scribes, priests, shepherds, brewers, potters, weavers, guards, merchants, and builders. There are stores of grain, stacks of clay jars, sealed baskets, measured fields, and scheduled labour. There are officials counting goods and gods receiving offerings. Somewhere in all of this movement, technology stops being only a tool in the hand. It becomes a system around the body. A plough is technology. A kiln is technology. A seal pressed into clay is technology. But so is the arrangement that tells who uses them, when, why, and for whom. That is where the ancient world becomes strangely familiar. You walk past a doorway where a woman grinds grain with steady pressure. The stone rasps softly, again and again, like a tired insect in the afternoon heat. Nearby, a child carries a clay bowl too large for both hands. A man repairs a reed mat, drawing fibre through fibre with patient skill. None of them look like prophets. None of them speak of modern machines, and yet they live inside a network of invention. The canal decides where crops may grow. The calendar decides when labour must gather. The temple storehouse decides how food moves. The written mark decides what memory is allowed to survive. Eridu, older and lower in the imagination, waits closer to the marshes. In Sumerian tradition, it was a sacred place connected with deep waters and wisdom. Archaeologists found long sequences of temple building there, layer upon layer, shrine upon shrine. The site gives you the feeling of a thought repeated for centuries. A community builds, repairs, replaces, and builds again. It doesn't simply occupy land. It teaches land to remember. A quirky tidbit lingers around Eridu like mist over reeds. Later stories named it among the first cities given kingship before the Great Flood. Some fringe writers treat that as proof of a vanished technological age. That is a large leap from a delicate fragment. Still, you can understand why the idea attracts attention. When a city is imagined as older than remembered time, the mind wants to place secrets beneath it. The scholarly debate remains more careful and more interesting. Some historians ask how much these early city traditions preserve genuine memory of ancient settlement. Others see them as theological storytelling, shaped to give temples and kings divine authority. A few archaeologists focus less on legend and more on climate, irrigation, and social competition. All three views can stand near one another without shouting. That is often how the past speaks best. In Nippur, the sacred atmosphere changes again. You sense less marsh water and more authority. The city becomes associated with Enlil, a major god of command, kingship, and cosmic order. Its temples do not simply serve local devotion. They become part of a wider mental map, where power needs recognition from sacred centres. A king may rule a city, but legitimacy must travel through something older than his own ambition. There is a quiet lesson there, and it has not become outdated. Even modern technology often needs a temple of approval, a laboratory, a patent office, a university, a government agency, a corporate platform. The costume changes, but the ritual remains oddly recognisable. You pass through a courtyard where workers carry baskets of clay on their shoulders. The wet bricks are set to dry in rows beneath the punishing sun. Each brick is plain. Together, they become walls, terraces, storehouses, and temples. Modern eyes often search ancient cities for single spectacular inventions, but the deeper transformation is cumulative. Brick after brick, mark after mark, channel after channel, the first machine age is not made of gears. It is made of coordination. Records from early Mesopotamia confirm the importance of ration lists, labour organisation, and temple redistribution. These are not glamorous documents, unless your idea of glamour includes barley accounting, and perhaps it should, just for tonight, because a ration tablet is a quiet miracle. It means someone's work, food, identity, and obligation can be converted into signs. It means the city has learned to think beyond the immediate moment. It can plan, it can remember, it can demand, it can promise. That last word matters. A city that records debt also records trust, even if that trust is under pressure. A city that measures grain also measures hunger. A city that builds a wall also admits fear. Ancient technology is never innocent. It protects, feeds, organizes, and sometimes controls. You feel this clearly as dusk comes over Uruk. The walls glow reddish-brown, and shadows stretch across the packed streets. From a roof, you can see fields beyond the city, cut into shapes by canals. You can see smoke rising from kilns and ovens. You can see people returning from labour, their bodies bent under baskets and tools. Somewhere, a scribe's tablet captures the movement of goods with neat, impressed signs. Somewhere else, a priest watches the timing of offerings. The entire place seems alive with hidden calculation. Not cold calculation, human calculation, the kind that grows from scarcity, fear, devotion, ambition, and hope. You begin to understand why a prophecy about technology might not sound like a machine. It might sound like a city learning to manage time. It might sound like water forced into channels. It might sound like clay remembering what the mind cannot hold, long before wires, engines, or digital networks. Sumerian cities show the first outline of a technological civilization. They gather bodies, tools, symbols, gods, food, and authority into one breathing structure. You are not looking at the opposite of the modern world. You are looking at one of its oldest roots. The night air cools above the roofs. A distant dog barks. A potter covers his unfinished vessels. A worker rinses dust from his hands near a canal. The city settles, but it does not sleep completely. No true system ever does. Your path narrows into a room where the city keeps its second memory. The first memory belongs to bodies, footsteps, voices, scars, and habits. The second memory belongs to clay. The room is dim, but not dark. Light enters through a high opening and falls across shelves, baskets, and low benches. Dust hangs in the air like fine ground flour. There is a smell of damp earth, old reeds, dry straw, and human hands. A scribe sits near the doorway with a lump of clay resting against his palm. He does not look heroic. He looks focused, slightly tired, and perhaps annoyed that the world keeps needing records. That is fair. The world is always asking someone to write things down. His reed stylus touches the soft surface and leaves a wedge-shaped mark. Then another, then another. Each impression is small, yet it holds a decision. A sheep becomes a sign. A jar becomes a number. A worker becomes a name. A field becomes a measured obligation. Records from Uruk confirm that early writing grew from administrative needs in the late 4th millennium before the Common Era. Scholars at Yale and the University of Chicago have long described these tablets as evidence for economic organization, not sudden literary inspiration. That sounds dry until you stand inside the room. Then it becomes almost unsettling, because here, memory no longer depends only on a living witness. Here, the city learns how to remember without a mouth. You watch the scribe press marks into clay, and the action feels strangely intimate. There is no glowing screen, no humming machine, no electric pulse. Still, a transfer is happening. Thought leaves the body and enters matter. Once it dries, it can outlive the hand that made it. That is one of the oldest technological miracles in human history. A person can die. A tablet can keep speaking. It may speak poorly. Of course, it may break, burn, vanish, or wait under dirt for thousands of years. But it speaks. The earliest tablets do not sound like prophecy at first. They sound like accounts. So many measures of grain, so many animals, so many jars, so many labourers assigned, counted, fed, or owed. If you came here expecting a thunderous secret, the tablet offers barley. Ancient history has a sense of humour, yet that ordinary surface hides a deeper change. A list is not just a list. A list is a way of arranging reality. It separates, classifies, ranks, and preserves. It tells the mind that the world can be broken into units. Then it tells power that units can be managed. That is where the quiet room begins to resemble the modern age. A database is also a list, though it wears brighter clothing. A spreadsheet is also a tablet, though it has learned to glow. A government form is also an ancient dream, although nobody says that with joy. You move past shelves where tablets dry in careful rows. Some are roundish, some flat, some shaped for the hand. Some carry seals rolled across the surface, leaving repeated images like tiny processions. The seal itself is a small cylinder carved with animals, gods, servants, or symbols. When rolled over clay, it leaves a pattern that says ownership, authority, or may, or approval. It is a signature before signatures. It is a password before passwords. It is identity turned into design. A quirky fringe tidbit often attaches itself to these seals. Some modern mystery writers claim that certain cylinder seal scenes show machines, helmets, rockets, or planets unknown to ancient observers. Most specialists reject these readings as imaginative misidentification. Still, the fascination is understandable. The images are compact, symbolic, and strange to modern eyes. A seated god, a star, a flowing vase, and a horned crown can feel like a diagram. When you do not know the grammar, everything looks like code. Open scholarly debate continues around how much early writing changed human thought itself. Some researchers argue that writing mainly served administration at first, a practical servant of temple and palace. Others suggest that the act of recording slowly reshaped memory, authority, and abstraction. Oxford historians often place the rise of writing within broader urban and economic transformations. The debate remains alive because the tablets are both simple and enormous. They are receipts, but they are also thresholds. You notice something else in the archive. The tablets are not all equal. Some are temporary, made for short use and later discarded. Some are baked by accident when buildings burn. Some are preserved because disaster rather than care protects them. That is almost too poetic. A fire meant to destroy a room can harden its memory forever. A collapse can become an archive. A ruin can become a library. The city, without intending to, sends messages through catastrophe. This is why ancient records feel like fragments of a larger hidden story. They rarely explain everything. They arrive broken, partial, and stubborn. A name without a face, a number without a voice, a god's title without the song that once surrounded it. You hold a tablet in your imagination and feel its weight. It is small enough to fit in one hand. Its surface is uneven, with edges worn by time. These signs are pressed so firmly that they seem less written than planted. Each wedge is a seed of memory, and from such seeds grew contracts, myths, laws, hymns, omens, school exercises, royal inscriptions, and scholarly lists. The archive expanded from counting goods into counting possibilities. If the world could be recorded, perhaps it could be understood. If it could be understood, perhaps it could be predicted. If it could be predicted, perhaps it could be guided. There were... Quietly, prophecy and technology begin to touch. Not because a tablet predicts a phone, not because an ancient scribe secretly knows electrical circuits, but because writing creates a new relationship with time. The past becomes searchable, the present becomes accountable, the future becomes something people try to calculate. You hear the soft scrape of reed against clay. Outside, the city continues its noisy life. Inside, the sound is smaller and more powerful. A young apprentice copies signs from a teacher's model. His marks are clumsy, and his teacher probably notices every failure. Some things never change. Education has always contained a little suffering. Yet the apprentice is learning more than writing. He is learning the architecture of order. He learns that names can be fixed. He learns that numbers can command grain. He learns that signs can stand for things absent from the room. This is abstraction, and abstraction is the great invisible engine. Modern technology depends on it. Code depends on it. Engineering depends on it. Money depends on it. Even prophecy depends on it. Because a sign must mean more than itself. The Sumerian tablet room becomes a place where the visible and invisible trade places. A mark stands for a sheep that is not there. A seal stands for a person who has gone elsewhere. A list stands for a storehouse no eye can fully see at once. A myth stands for a question too large for direct speech. Your mind drifts toward the phrase sometimes translated as tablets of destiny. In later Mesopotamian tradition, destiny itself could be imagined as something inscribed, held, stolen, guarded, or restored. That idea is not modern science. It is not a computer program. Yet it suggests a world where order is written somewhere, a world where control belongs to whoever holds the record. That should sound familiar even in a sleepy room. The archive grows quiet as evening approaches. The scribe sets aside the tablet and smooths clay from his fingers. A basket is covered. A seal is tucked away. The last light touches the shelves and makes the clay glow softly. You begin to feel that these tablets are not dead objects. They are small, delayed voices. They carry grain, work, devotion, fear, habit, and authority across impossible distances. They are fragments of a system that once believed signs could hold the world together. Perhaps every age builds its own tablets. Clay, parchment, paper, server, cloud. The material changes, the old hunger remains. Somewhere in the fading heat, the city keeps breathing. And in the room of clay, memory waits with its mouth closed. The city grows quieter as your attention turns toward the high platforms of mud brick. The streets still carry voices, but they seem lower now, softened by distance and evening air. A faint scent of incense moves from a temple courtyard. It mingles with dust, wool, river dampness, and the warm breath of animals. Above you, the stepped shape of a ziggurat rises like a handmade mountain. Its edges catch the last light, turning brown clay into dull gold. You climb slowly, not as a king or priest, but as a listener. Each step feels worn by many feet. Each brick seems to hold heat from the day. At the top, the sky opens wide enough to make the city feel small. Here, prophecy does not arrive as thunder, it arrives as attention. A priest watches the movement of clouds over the plain. Another studies oil poured into water, observing how the surface bends and separates. A third listens to the dream of a ruler who woke uneasy before dawn. These are not random acts to the people who perform them. They are methods. They are ways of asking whether the universe has left a trace. Records from Mesopotamia confirm that divination became a major learned tradition, especially in later Babylonian and Assyrian scholarship. Researchers at Harvard and Yale have studied omen texts as part of a highly organized intellectual culture. The practice may seem strange at first, but the impulse is recognizable. You know it already. You check weather reports before traveling. You read financial forecasts before risk. You glance at a message and wonder what someone really meant. Humans have always searched the surface of events for deeper instruction. In Sumerian and later Mesopotamian thought, the world could be read. A sheep's liver might carry a sign. A bird's flight might suggest danger. An eclipse might trouble a king. A crack in a wall, a strange birth, a dream, a storm, or an unusual star could enter the archive of meaning. This was not casual superstition in the way modern people often imagine it. It was trained observation joined to sacred expectation. The learned specialist gathered cases, compared signs, and preserved results. A sign occurred. An event followed. The relationship was written down. Over time, those records created a library of possible futures. Not certainty. Possibility. You stand in the temple shadow and feel how serious that must have been. The city depends on timing. Too much water and fields drown. Too little water, and hunger walks through the gate. A king who misreads danger may lose soldiers, grain, or divine favour. A merchant who misjudges a journey may lose donkeys, goods, and skin. So prophecy is not merely decorative. It is a technology of anxiety. It gives shape to fear. It turns dread into procedure. That phrase may feel modern, but it fits. An omen collection is a system for organising uncertainty. It doesn't use electricity. It does not need metal gears. It uses categories, records, specialists, memory, and interpretation. A machine made of signs. You hear a faint bell from below, perhaps tied to a ritual movement or animal harness. The sound floats upward and disappears under the first evening star. A priest bends over a small bowl where oil spreads across water. The shining surface trembles in the fading light. If the oil forms one pattern, the message may be favourable. If it breaks another way, caution may be required. The modern mind may smile gently at this. A sleepy little smile, not an unkind one. Yet before smiling too confidently, remember how often modern systems do similar things. Markets read signals, doctors read scans, scientists read graphs, algorithms read behaviour. The difference is enormous in method, evidence, and reliability. But the older hunger is related. A surface is observed, and a hidden condition is inferred. A visible mark becomes a doorway to invisible knowledge. That is the ancient bridge between prophecy and technology. The Sumerian word of the gods is not simply spoken. It is searched for. It is decoded. It is handled by trained readers who stand between ordinary life and unseen order. A quirky fringe tidbit often appears around this practice. Some modern speculation claims that omen priests were preserving fragments of a lost scientific method. That claim stretches far beyond the evidence. Yet the comparison is not entirely empty if it remains modest. Both divination and science require disciplined watching, remembered cases, and patterns tested against experience. The difference is that modern science demands controlled evidence and correction by repeated experiment. Ancient divination sought meaning inside a sacred cosmos. They are not the same road. Still, both begin with the same human discomfort. The future refuses to speak clearly, so people build languages to question it. Open scholarly debate continues over how omen traditions developed from earlier Sumerian practice into the vast scholarly systems of later Mesopotamia. Some historians emphasize religious authority and temple ritual. Others focus on palace politics because kings needed warnings and reassurance. A few scholars explore how these texts show early forms of classification and intellectual discipline. The debate is useful because no single explanation can hold the whole sky. From the ziggurat height, you see fields fading into darkness. Irrigation channels catch the last light like thin strips of metal. The city lamps begin to appear, small and unsteady. Somewhere, families sit near doorways for cooler air. Somewhere, a baker closes an oven. Somewhere, a scribe copies a line about a sign seen in heaven. And above all of them, the stars settle into their old positions. To the people of Sumer, the sky is not empty space. It is a written dome. The moon does not merely shine. It keeps time. Venus does not merely appear. It comes and goes with a rhythm that invites attention. The sun does not merely rise. It measures labour, heat, season, danger, and rest. You can feel why ancient watchers became patient. The sky rewards patience. It also punishes arrogance. Look too quickly and you see only lights. Look long enough and the lights become a calendar. Look longer still and the calendar becomes fate. This is where prophecy beneath the ziggurat becomes quietly unsettling. Not because it tells you one fixed future, because it suggests that human beings have always lived beneath systems larger than themselves. The river system, the grain system, the temple system, the sky system, the divine system. The modern technological system will one day join them, surrounding human life with signals, predictions, warnings, rankings, and invisible calculations. But for now, there is clay, water, oil, smoke, stars, and breath. The priest watches the bowl. The scribe waits with the tablet. The city waits with them. Perhaps the message will say the king is safe. Perhaps it will say the fields need care. Perhaps it will say nothing clear at all, which is very impolite of the universe. Even in uncertainty, the ritual matters. It tells the people that someone is watching. Someone is comparing. Someone is trying to read the storm before it arrives. As night deepens, the ziggurat cools beneath your hands. The bricks lose their stored heat. The city below becomes a dark shape threaded with small fires. You sense that prophecy here is not a wild interruption of ordinary life. It is part of administration, religion, weather, agriculture, medicine, politics, and sleep. It is woven through the attempt to live one more season. The ancient future is never completely invented. It is assembled from signs. A cloud, a dream, a star, a ripple of oil on water, a mark in clay. The modern world will call its own signs by other names. Data, signal, model, forecast, or probability. Those words will sound cleaner. They will not smell of incense or wet clay. Still, they will carry a familiar hope. Tell us what comes next. Tell us before it hurts. Tell us while there is time. The night wind moves over the high platform and the temple lamps tremble. No answer comes loudly. Only the quiet remains, full of patterns waiting to be read. Your hands rest against the cool edge of a temple wall, and the night air shifts. It carries the scent of river reeds, damp mud, burnt offerings, and crushed herbs. Below the platform, the city murmurs in darkness. Above it, the stars remain patient, bright, and almost too orderly. In this world, wisdom does not live only in the human mind. It flows through water, craft, speech, measurement, and the deep places beneath the earth. That is where Enki waits. He's not waiting as a simple character in a simple tale. Ancient gods rarely behave like tidy symbols for modern comfort. They are powers, personalities, fears, memories, and explanations gathered into one presence. Enki is associated with fresh water, wisdom, creation, craft, magic, and hidden knowledge. His home is often imagined at Eridu, near the marshy edges of the southern world. You can picture that place now, low and shimmering, where reeds rattle softly in the wind. Water gathers there in channels, pools, and underground mystery. In a dry land, water is never just water. It is life, permission, danger, and wealth. It is the difference between a field and a grave. It is also a teacher. Water finds paths. Water remembers slopes. Water disappears underground and returns when no one expects it. Perhaps that is why wisdom and water belong together in so many ancient imaginations. Records from Sumerian literature preserve Enki as a figure of cleverness and creative power. Scholars from the University of Pennsylvania and Oxford have examined myths where divine order is distributed through sacred decrees. These decrees are sometimes described as organizing forces behind civilization. Kingship, priesthood, craft, and social life. The idea is beautiful and slightly unnerving. Civilization is not imagined as random. It is assigned. It is measured. It is handed out like tools from a divine storehouse. You move through a temple precinct in your mind and see craftsmen working under lamplight. A copper worker heats metal until it glows. A carpenter smooths wood with slow pressure. A potter lifts a vessel from the wheel, wet and fragile, before fire gives it strength. A weaver passes thread through thread, building order out of softness. Each craft feels practical, yet each craft also feels like participation in a sacred pattern. This is one reason ancient technology cannot be separated from religion. Modern people often divide the world into categories. Science over here, faith over there, economy in another room. The Sumerian world is less tidy, and perhaps more honest about human motives. A canal can feed a city and honor a god. A temple can store grain and shape belief. A scribe can count sheep and touch cosmic order. A craftsman can make a tool and repeat an ancient act of divine intelligence. Enki stands near all of this, not with a screwdriver, thankfully, but with something older. Knowledge, cunning, design, the ability to shape raw material into functioning order. That may be the hidden root of the technological imagination. Before a machine exists, someone must believe matter can be persuaded. Clay can become a tablet. Stone can become a weight. Reed can become a stylus. Water can become a canal. A human voice can become a written sign. The world can be rearranged if you know the method. That is Enki's atmosphere. Not a prophecy of circuits, but a prophecy of technique. A quirky fringe tidbit circles around him with familiar enthusiasm. Some modern interpreters imagine Enki as a memory of an advanced teacher, a being who brought technical knowledge to early humanity. That idea belongs to modern speculation rather than established archaeology. Still, it lingers because Enki's myths do present knowledge as something transferred. Wisdom moves from divine possession into human institutions. Crafts, rituals, cities, and social roles appear as gifts or arrangements from a higher order. The leap to ancient astronauts is unnecessary. The older myth is already strange enough. Open scholarly debate remains over how to interpret these divine decrees. Some specialists understand them as religious expressions of social order. Others see them as poetic reflections of institutions that had already developed over centuries. A few scholars ask whether myths like these preserve memories of cultural innovation. Compressed into divine narrative, the uncertainty is not a weakness. It is part of the texture. You are listening to a world explain itself using gods, because gods are the largest language it has. In this language, technology is never merely human. It comes from contact with a deeper pattern. The modern age says invention comes from research, funding, need, accident, and brilliance. The ancient age says invention may come from divine wisdom rising through water. Both explanations reveal something. One explains process. The other explains awe. You walk now along the edge of an imagined canal under moonlight. The water surface is dark, broken by thin lines of reflected stars. A boat is tied to a post, creaking quietly as the current nudges it. A fisherman's net hangs nearby, smelling of river weeds and old labour. The city behind you is a low shape of walls, roofs, and temple terraces. You think of measurement. To manage water, people must understand slope, timing, depth, and maintenance. A canal is not a one-time invention. It is a relationship. It demands clearing, guarding, scheduling for fanji, and repair. Neglect it, and it silts up. misuse it and fields suffer, control it too harshly, and someone else goes thirsty. And this is why water technology creates politics. It also creates prophecy, because everyone wants to know whether the river will behave. Enki's wisdom, then, is not abstract. It is practical intelligence bound to survival. The god who measures everything is also the god who knows that life depends on hidden channels. Some are in the earth, some are in society, some are in the mind. You hear distant voices from the city, softened by night. A child cries once, then quiets. A door latch clicks. A dog moves through an alley and knocks loose a small stone. These little sounds make the divine seem less distant. Ancient gods lived among ordinary things because ordinary things were never truly ordinary. Bread depended on grain. Grain depended on water. Water depended on canals. Canals depended on labour. Labour depended on order. Order depended on stories strong enough to make people cooperate. There is the system again, forming beneath your feet. Modern technology also rests on such hidden chains. A glowing device depends on mines, factories, shipping routes, code, power grids, laws, and tired people answering emails. The magic is real, but it is also managed. Enki's world understands that paradox. The divine tool shines, but someone still has to clean the canal. That is perhaps the gentlest sarcasm the ancient world offers us. Even sacred wisdom produces maintenance work. As the moon rises, the water in the canal looks almost black. You imagine Enki not as a figure descending with machines, but as a presence within the act of making. He is there when a builder aligns bricks. He is there when a scribe chooses signs. He is there when a healer mixes plants. He is there when a ruler claims order, and when the claim begins to crack. Wisdom is powerful, but it is not always safe. Knowledge can irrigate fields. It can also deepen control. It can preserve memory. It can also bind people inside records they did not choose. The Sumerian imagination seems aware of this tension. Divine knowledge creates civilization, but civilization is heavy. It asks for obedience to labour, offerings and trust. It gives bread, walls, songs and protection. It also gives hierarchy. The god who measures everything leaves no one entirely unmeasured. That thought settles slowly, not as fear, as recognition. In the distance, the temple lamps burn low. The canal keeps moving, dark and quiet. The reeds whisper with small animal life. You feel that ancient prophecy, if it lives anywhere tonight, lives in this connection between wisdom and system. Whoever learns to measure the world begins to change it. Whoever changes it must answer for what follows. Perhaps Enki's oldest secret is not that technology will rise. Perhaps the secret is softer, older, and more difficult. Knowledge is a gift that always asks what kind of world it is building. The night thins slowly, and the first pale light returns to the plain. You stand near a courtyard where baskets, jars, ropes, stones, and tablets wait for use. Nothing here glows, nothing clicks, nothing sends a signal through the air, yet the entire place is filled with calculation. A worker lifts a standard weight and sets it beside a heap of grain. A scribe watches the balance carefully, then presses marks into clay. Another person counts animals moving through a gate, touching each one with his eyes. There is a quiet seriousness to numbers here. They are not decoration. They are control made portable. They allow grain to leave one room and still remain present in memory. They allow labour to be promised before it happens. They allow distance, time, and goods to be folded into signs. This is where power begins to count itself. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm the use of weights, measures, accounting systems, and structured number signs. Scholars at Yale and the University of Chicago have studied these mathematical traditions as evidence of practical administration and intellectual sophistication. The Sumerians and their successors used a base 60 system that still shadows your life. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle. The ancient hand reaches calmly into your clock. It rests there without apology. That is one of the strangest feelings in history. You are not only looking backward at Sumer, some part of Sumer is still looking outward through your modern habits. Every time a clock divides the day, the old numerical imagination stirs. Every time a circle is measured in degrees, something from the river plain survives. It does not survive as a temple chant or a royal boast. It survives as structure, Numbers become the bones of memory. You walk past a low table where small clay tokens lie scattered. Some are cones, spheres, discs, and tiny shapes that once represented goods. Before full writing, people used such tokens to count and manage property. A sheep could be represented by a small object. A jar of oil could become another shape. The physical world gained a second, smaller world beside it. A world of symbols, a world that could be carried, sealed, stored, and checked. This is not yet mathematics as a schoolroom exercise. It is mathematics with dirt under its fingernails. It smells of barns, canals, grain bins, and sweaty arguments over fairness. You can almost hear someone saying that the count is wrong. Some complaints are eternal. A quirky tidbit drifts in from the edges of mathematical history. Because 60 divides neatly by many numbers, it is wonderfully useful for fractions. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30 all fit inside it. That means ancient accountants had chosen, or inherited, a system with surprising elegance. One might say 60 is overqualified for counting sheep. Yet there it is, patiently serving astronomy, geometry, trade, and time. Some fringe writers suggest this numerical system hints at secret advanced knowledge. The safer wonder is simpler and stronger. Human beings under pressure can create astonishing tools from ordinary needs. Open scholarly debate continues over how the base 60 system developed. Some researchers connect it with old accounting methods that used fingers and hand joints. Others point toward administrative convenience, trade, astronomy, and inherited traditions from earlier communities. Oxford historians often remind us that no single cause explains such durable systems. A number system can grow like a canal network. It follows use, habit, geography, memory, and power. The morning grows warmer. Dust rises where people cross the courtyard. You see a young assistant carrying a tablet that lists measures of barley. The tablet does not simply record food. It transforms food into units. A heap becomes a quantity becomes an obligation becomes a command becomes labour. This is how numbers become power without raising their voice. They seem neutral. That is their genius. A number does not shout. It waits for people to obey what it represents. The ancient temple economy depends on this quiet authority. Fields must be measured. Rations must be distributed. Workers must be assigned. Offerings must be counted. Animals must be tracked. Storage rooms must be checked before hunger makes everyone philosophical in the worst possible way. Measurement is how the city keeps panic at a manageable distance. It is also how rulers and temples extend their reach. If a field can be measured, it can be taxed. If a worker can be counted, he can be scheduled. If a jar can be sealed, it can be claimed. If a season can be predicted, labour can be gathered at the proper time. The calendar enters this world as more than a way to name days. It becomes an instrument of coordination. Moon phases, agricultural cycles, ritual festivals, and administrative schedules overlap. Time becomes organised. Time becomes usable. Time becomes something people can owe. There is an unsettling modern echo in that idea. Your own world also divides time into obligations. Appointments, deadlines, reminders, alarms, shifts, meetings, and school schedules. You may not think of this as ancient, but the old river plane would understand. Civilization teaches people to share time. Then it teaches them to surrender pieces of it. You continue into a scribal school, or something close to one. The room is modest, with clay tablets arranged near a student's learning signs and numbers. A teacher corrects a mistake with the calm severity of someone who has seen that mistake too often. The students copy tables. They learn metrological lists. They practice conversions. The work is repetitive, precise, and probably not very romantic. Still, this is where abstraction grows disciplined. A child who learns that one unit can become another is learning mental transformation. A measure of grain can be converted. A field can be calculated. A debt can be carried forward. A celestial cycle can be recorded. The mind becomes a workshop. Mainstream historical research shows that Mesopotamian mathematical tablets later reached high levels of sophistication. They include tables, problem texts, and calculations useful for land, construction, and administration. Not every tablet belongs to the earlier Sumerian age, but the roots are deep. The habit of numerical order begins early. The later brilliance does not fall from the sky. It grows from centuries of counting, measuring, training, and correcting errors. A very human path, in other words. You can almost smell the frustration. Clay dust, warm bodies, and the faint despair of homework. Yet the achievement is immense. Numbers teach the city to extend itself. They cross distances better than memory. They compare things that cannot stand side by side. They make the absent present. They turn the future into a space where plans can be placed. That is why prophecy and mathematics share a hidden kinship. Both refuse to leave time alone. Both look at what is not here yet and try to give it form. One uses sacred signs. The other uses quantities. Both begin with uncertainty. Both ask whether change has a pattern. The sky above Sumer strengthens this connection. The moon repeats. The seasons return. The river rises and falls. Venus appears and vanishes with regular mystery. To notice rhythm is to discover that time has habits. To record those habits is to become dangerous in a new way. A person who knows cycles can prepare. A temple that knows cycles can command. A king who claims to know cycles can appear favoured by heaven. Modern technology still depends on this power. Computers calculate, satellites measure, markets quantify, hospitals monitor, phones count steps, heartbeats, minutes, purchases, routes, and sleep. It's all very impressive and slightly rude. The ancient world would not recognize the devices, but it would recognize the impulse. Measure the body, measure the field, measure the sky, measure the work, measure the world until it becomes legible. The courtyard is now bright with morning. A worker pours grain into a container while another checks the measure. The sound is soft and dry, like rain made of food. A seal rolls across clay and leaves its miniature procession. The scribe's stylus moves again. For a moment the scene feels simple. Then you sense the deeper structure beneath it. Every count is a thread. Every measure ties someone to someone else. Every calendar mark binds the city to the heavens. When numbers become power, they do not need a throne. They only need trust, or fear. Often, they have both. As the sun rises higher, you step away from the courtyard. Behind you, the counting continues with no ceremony at all. That may be its most powerful feature. The ancient technological mind is not always born in dramatic revelation. Sometimes it begins with a basket of grain, a standard weight, and a tired scribe making sure nobody gets clever with the barley. The future of timekeeping, engineering, accounting, astronomy, and digital logic has not arrived yet. But the door has opened. Quietly, in base 60, the sun moves toward its full strength, and the fields outside the city begin to shimmer. You walk where irrigation channels cut through the soil, carrying brown water between green strips of life. The air smells of damp clay, cut reeds, warm grain, and animals standing too close together. Workers bend under baskets, hoes, and bundles of harvested stalks. Their bodies create a rhythm the city depends on but rarely celebrates. A temple may rise above them. A king may carve his victory. A god may receive the finest offerings. Yet the weight rests here, on shoulders, hands, backs, and knees. Every civilization has a beautiful face and a tired spine. Sumer is no exception. To understand humanity's role in the ancient technological imagination, you must stand among the workers, not above them. Not in the throne room. Here, near the canal, creation stories begin to feel less abstract. Some Mesopotamian traditions imagine humans created to perform labor for the gods. In later Akkadian texts, the burden of divine work is shifted onto humankind. The details belong to different periods and languages, but the idea echoes through Mesopotamian thought. People exist inside a cosmic economy. They feed temples. They serve gods. They maintain order. They work because the world itself has work built into it. Scholars from the University of Pennsylvania and Yale have studied these creation traditions as mythic reflections of labor, hierarchy, and temple society. The stories are not laboratory reports about human origins. They are mirrors held up to an ancient social world. And in that mirror, humanity appears useful, vulnerable, and necessary. That is a complicated kind of dignity. You're not told that humans are meaningless. You are told that humans are needed. But being needed is not the same as being free. The fields make that lesson visible. A group of men clear silt from a canal with slow, repetitive movements. A woman carries a basket of grain toward a storage area. Children chase away birds from the edge of a field, half working and half playing. An overseer watches the line of labourers with an expression that belongs to every age. He is counting productivity. Of course he is. Someone always is. The hidden system is everywhere. Water must be guided. Seeds must be planted. Harvests must be gathered. Rations must be assigned. Offerings must be delivered. The city does not survive because one brilliant invention appears. It survives because thousands of repeated tasks are forced into pattern. That pattern is what ancient myth turns into cosmic order. When a story says humans were created for work, it may sound harsh to modern ears. It is harsh, but it is also honest about the weight of civilization. Cities do not build themselves. Temples do not feed themselves. Archives do not fill themselves. Canals do not politely clean themselves, which is inconsiderate but true. Someone must carry the mud. Someone must press the clay. Someone must bake the bread, turn the wheel, seal the jar, and repair the wall. In the old stories, even the gods seem to want relief from labour. That is a quirky and strangely human detail. Divine beings, in some traditions, complain about work. They grow tired. They desire servants. They reorganize the cosmos like exhausted managers before a very long meeting. This does not make them small. It makes the myth socially revealing. The people who told these stories knew that organized life required burden. They imagined that burden extending upward into heaven itself. Open scholarly debate continues over how directly these myths reflect real labor systems. Some historians read them as theological explanations for human service to the gods. Others see them as ideological support for temple economies and social hierarchy. A few scholars suggest they preserve emotional memories of increasing urban demands. No single reading exhausts the story. The myth speaks in many directions at once. It explains why offerings matter. It explains why work matters. It explains why humans stand between earth and heaven, holding tools in tired hands. You step into the shade of a reed shelter near the field edge. The shade is thin but welcome. A clay cup of beer passes from one worker to another, cloudy and nourishing. Ancient Mesopotamian beer was not a casual luxury for many labourers. It could be part of rations, calories, comfort, and social life. The taste is sour, thick, and grainy in your imagination. Not exactly a modern craft tasting room. Still, after canal work under the sun, it might feel like mercy. Nearby, a ration tablet records distributions. The marks are practical and impersonal. So much barley, so much oil, so much wool. A person's survival becomes an entry in a system. The tablet does not hate anyone. That is what makes it powerful. It simply records. Modern systems often behave this way too. They process names, hours, wages, scores, records, applications, and permissions. They may help. They may harm. They may not notice the difference unless someone makes them notice. Here in Sumer, the ancient version is clay, seal, storage, and overseer. The human role is clear. People are the moving parts of the city. They are also the reason the city exists. This tension makes the prophecy of technology feel more personal. If technology is the power to organize matter, then it also organizes people. A canal organizes water, but it organizes labor as well. A calendar organizes season, but it organizes bodies too. A tablet organizes memory, but it organizes obligation. A temple organizes offerings, but it organizes hunger, status, and hope. Humanity serves the system, and humanity is served by it. Both statements are true. That is why the old myths do not fade easily. You watch a worker pause beside the canal and rub mud from his forearm. His face is lined by sun, effort, and perhaps the private thoughts history never records. He may believe the gods made humanity for service. He may simply know that the field must be finished before evening. Those are not opposite truths in his world. Divine order and daily necessity are braided tightly together. When the wind shifts, you hear a temple drum from the city. The sound is low and steady, like a heartbeat heard through walls. It reminds the workers that their labour belongs to something larger. Perhaps that comforts them. Perhaps it pressures them. Perhaps both. Human beings often survive by giving meaning to what they cannot escape. This is where the ancient creation story becomes quietly modern. Your own age also asks what humans are for inside powerful systems. Are people creators, users, workers, data points, consumers, citizens, souls, or resources? The answer changes depending on who is counting. A corporation may see labour, a state may see population, a machine may see input, a poet may see longing, a parent may see a child. Sumerian myth uses the language of gods to clay and service. Modern life uses other vocabularies, but the question remains, what is humanity's role inside the structure it has built? The field grows brighter. Sweat darkens clothing. A basket is lifted again. A tool strikes the canal edge with a dull, wet sound. There is no grand prophecy spoken here, only the repetition that makes prophecy believable. The future is not built first by kings. It is built by hands that rarely appear in royal inscriptions. It is built by people who move earth because water must arrive on time. It is built by women grinding grain before dawn. It is built by children learning the work that waits for them. It is built by scribes translating bodies into numbers. If the Sumerians imagined humans as sacred workers, then their world understood something essential. Technology is never only about invention. It is about assignment. Who must labour? Who receives the result? Who keeps the record? Who claims the blessing? As afternoon light flattens the fields, the city in the distance looks almost peaceful. Its walls are warm, its temple high, its smoke rising in soft columns. From far away, civilization appears serene. From close up, it is effort. The canal water slips past your feet, carrying silt, reflection, and the faint smell of life. You begin to feel the hidden prophecy forming again, not as a prediction of machines, but as a warning about systems. Every order that promises abundance must decide what to do with human exhaustion. Every technology that extends power must ask who pays in time, muscle, attention, and sleep. The workers continue beneath the sun. The city waits for their return. And the gods are silent above the fields, receive the whirl that human hands keep making. The heat begins to loosen its grip as you return toward the city gates. Dust clings to your feet, and the canal wind carries the smell of wet clay. Ahead, the archive rooms wait behind walls that look plain from the outside. They are not palaces. They are not theatres of glory. They are the quieter organs of the city. Inside them, Sumer learns to remember itself in pieces small enough to hold. You enter a storage area where baskets of grain stand beside sealed jars and stacked tablets. The room is narrow, practical, and almost shy. Light falls through a doorway and touches the edges of clay like old honey. A scribe kneels near a low bench, checking a tablet against a delivery of barley. A worker waits beside him, patient in the way people become patient when authority is writing. The reed stylus moves. A line of signs appears. The city takes one more breath through its records. Archaeological finds from Uruk, Jemdet Nasr and other early Mesopotamian sites confirm that clay tablets stored information about commodities, personnel, and institutions. Scholars at the University of Chicago and the University of Pennsylvania have shown how these administrative texts reveal systems of accounting before literature became dominant. This is the ancient database, but it does not hum. It dries. It cracks. It sits on a shelf and dares time to do its worst. The comparison to a database may feel modern, yet it is useful. A database stores selected facts in structured form. A tablet archive does something similar with the materials available to its age. It chooses what matters. It gives that thing a sign. It arranges signs so another trained person can recover meaning later. A jar of oil moves, but the record stays. A worker finishes a day, but the ration remains listed. A field produces grain, but the measured yield enters clay memory. The city now has a mind outside the minds of its people. That thought is quiet, but enormous. A human brain forgets. A human witness dies. A spoken agreement can bend under pressure. Clay is not perfect, but it resists. It says this was counted. This was sealed. This was owed. This was received. You can almost feel the social pressure gathered inside those little tablets. They are not neutral pebbles. They are instruments of trust and control. They can protect a transaction, but they can also trap a person inside obligation. Modern records do the same, only with smoother surfaces. A payroll file, a bank ledger, a hospital chart, a school record, a border document, a tax notice. The forms change, but the ancient principle remains. Life becomes governable when it becomes recordable. In the corner, a sealed jar sits beneath a clay stopper impressed with a cylinder seal. The image is tiny, but meaningful. A figure approaches another figure, perhaps in devotion, perhaps in authority. To the modern eye, the scene feels ceremonial. To the ancient administrator, it also works like security. The seal marks control over what is inside. It is a sign that someone important has already looked, claimed, approved, or forbidden. The jar does not need a guard every moment. The seal watches in silence. That is clever. A little eerie too. A quirky fringe tidbit clings to the ancient seal like dust. Some mystery enthusiasts have compared cylinder seals to modern identity systems, even calling them the first passwords. That is playful rather than strictly scholarly. Yet the comparison has a small truth inside it. The seal turns a personal or institutional identity into a repeatable mark. It allows recognition at distance. It creates authority without the owner being physically present. No glowing login screen required. Just carved stone, wet clay, and enough social agreement to make the mark matter. Open scholarly debate continues over how centralized these early record systems really were. Some researchers emphasize temple institutions as major organizing centers. Others argue for a more mixed environment of households, officials, workshops, and evolving civic structures. Stanford and Oxford trained historians have often cautioned against making every tablet serve one grand theory. The evidence is rich, but uneven. That unevenness is part of its honesty. The archive does not give you the whole city. It gives you what the city chose to write down. And what a society writes down may reveal what it fears losing. Grain, labour, property, offerings, names, quantities, responsibilities. These are the things too important to leave entirely to memory. You walk along a shelf where tablets lie in groups. Some are still damp, their surfaces soft enough to be ruined by a careless thumb. Some are dry and pale, harder now, less forgiving. A tablet broken in half lies beside a complete one, its edge jagged like a torn thought. The scribe does not seem emotional about it. He has more work. History may be sacred to us, but to him it is paperwork. That is a healthy reminder. Not every ancient object was made to impress future museums. Many were made because someone needed to know how many sheep had arrived. Still, the ordinary is exactly where the modern echo deepens. The first Dart cities do not begin with philosophy. They begin with administration. They gather small facts until the facts become infrastructure. Once enough records exist, the city can act at a larger scale. It can distribute rations, plan labour, manage fields, oversee workshops, and coordinate offerings. It can remember more than any elder or official could hold alone. The city becomes a collective memory machine. And every memory machine changes power. You pause near an apprentice who is copying signs. His clay is too wet, and one wedge collapses at the edge. The teacher sighs. The sound is ancient, universal, and slightly devastating. A child learning to write in Sumer is not only learning marks, he is learning which realities deserve official form. A goat can become a sign. A day of labour can become a sign. A debt can become a sign. But what about grief? What about exhaustion? What about the private dislike of the overseer? Those things exist, yet they rarely enter the administrative tablet. Every data system sees sharply and blindly at the same time. That may be one of the oldest warnings hiding in clay. To record is to select is to value is to shape the world that future readers will inherit. Mainstream archaeological study treats these tablets as evidence for early urban management, economic activity, and literacy among trained specialists. That fact alone is remarkable. But if you listen more softly, the tablets also reveal a philosophical turning point. Human life is being translated into durable signs. Something living becomes something countable. Something temporary becomes something stored. Something personal becomes something institutional. The ancient database has begun. Outside, the late light turns the city walls amber, A cart rolls over a rough street, creaking beneath sacks of grain. The animals snort and toss their heads. A man calls out, then laughs at some small accident near the gate. Ordinary life continues, full of noise and warmth. Inside the archive, the signs remain still. That contrast feels important. The city is movement. The tablet is pause. The city forgets by sunset. The tablet waits through centuries. You think of modern data centers hidden in cold rooms far from public sight. They store messages, images, locations, habits, payments, and voices. They are bright, invisible archives. They do what the tablets did, only faster and with far less dust. Still, the first question is unchanged. What should be remembered? The second question follows close behind. Who gets to decide? The scribe sets one finished tablet aside. Its surface shines faintly while it dries. No one in the room treats it as prophecy, yet it carries a small forecast within it. A civilization that records itself will become capable of large control. A society that stores signs will build systems beyond ordinary memory. A world that trusts records will slowly reshape itself around them. The room grows dim. The shelves blur into shadow. Clay tablets rest in their rows like sleeping animals. They do not glow, speak, or move. They simply keep. And in that keeping, the ancient city becomes something more than walls, canals, temples, and streets. It becomes information arranged in matter. It becomes memory with edges. It becomes a quiet ancestor of every system that now remembers you. Night returns with a gentler step, and the city begins to look upward again. The heat leaves the mud brick walls slowly, as if the day is reluctant to depart. You stand on a roof where reed mats cover part of the sleeping space. A clay lamp burns near your feet, its flame small and yellow. The air smells of cooling dust, sesame oil, river dampness, and smoke from late cooking fires. Dogs bark beyond the gate. A donkey shifts in its stall. Somewhere below, a baby cries once, then settles into the breathing dark. Above all of this, the stars open like an archive without walls. The sky is not silent to the people watching it. It keeps patterns. It offers returns. It holds warnings, festivals, calculations, and divine presence. To a modern eye, stars are distant suns, magnificent but physically remote. To the ancient Mesopotamian mind, they are also signs within a living order. The moon sets time in motion. Venus appears and disappears with theatrical patience. The planets wander against the fixed stars, strange travellers with habits of their own. You feel why the watchers continue night after night. The sky rewards those who wait. Archaeological and textual evidence confirms that Mesopotamian scholars developed careful astronomical observations over many centuries. Although the most systematic surviving records come from later Babylonian tradition, their roots lie in older habits of watching, timing, and omen reading. Researchers at Brown University, Yale, and other major institutions have studied how celestial observation joined mathematics, religion, and royal decision-making. The point is not that Sumerian shepherds secretly built telescopes. They did not. The wonder is that patient looking became a technology of prediction. At first the sky seems immeasurable, then the moon returns, then seasons turn, then certain stars rise before floods, heat, harvest, or ritual time. The impossible ceiling becomes a calendar. The calendar becomes a guide. The guide becomes authority. You watch a priest or learned observer stand near the roof edge, facing the deepening east. He is wrapped against the night air. Though the day was hot enough to punish everyone, his attention rests on the horizon. He is waiting for a particular light to appear. Not every star matters equally at every moment. The timing matters. The direction matters. The brightness matters. A cloudy night is not just inconvenient. It is an interruption in the conversation between heaven and earth. That may sound poetic, but there is a practical side. Agricultural societies need seasonal rhythm. Cities need calendars. Temples need festival dates. Rulers need signs of legitimacy, reassurance, and warning. Watching the sky allows people to place human work inside larger cycles. It tells them when to expect, prepare, gather, fear, celebrate, or wait. That is not small. It is civilization looking for a clock large enough to trust. A quirky fringe tidbit moves softly at the edge of this roof. Some modern writers claim that the Sumerians knew planets that should have been invisible without advanced instruments. Most scholars reject such claims, pointing to later interpretation, symbolic imagery, and modern overreading. Yet the attraction of the claim is revealing. Ancient star knowledge feels so patient, so exact in later Mesopotamian sources that people want to push it beyond human effort. But human effort is already astonishing. Long attention can look like magic when viewed from a distracted age. You remain under the sky and sense the quiet discipline involved. Night after night, someone must remember, someone must compare, someone must teach an apprentice where to look. Someone must mark the appearance of the moon and connect it to ritual time. Someone must notice irregularity and wonder whether it means disorder below. The sky becomes a text, but it is a difficult text. It has no page edge. It cannot be stored in a basket. Clouds erase it. Dawn takes it away. So people build systems to hold what the eyes cannot keep. They create lists, calendars, omen collections, and mathematical habits. They use clay to keep fragments of heaven close to the ground. Open scholarly debate continues over the relationship between observation and omen interpretation in early Mesopotamia. Some historians emphasize practical calendrical needs and the growth of mathematical astronomy. Others stress divination, royal politics, and the belief that celestial events revealed divine intention. A few scholars argue that practical and sacred motives were not separate for ancient observers. That last view feels especially persuasive on this roof. You're not watching a scientist in a modern laboratory. You're also not watching a simple dreamer. You're watching someone for whom knowledge, duty, fear, and worship occupy the same sky. The moon lifts higher, pale and cool. Its light touches roof beams, clay jars, sleeping mats, and the edge of a wooden ladder. You imagine the month being counted by its phases. First crescent, full brightness. Diminishing curve, darkness, return. A cycle like this teaches the mind to expect renewal. It also teaches the mind to fear interruption. What happens when an eclipse comes? What happens when the moon seems swallowed by shadow? Modern astronomy explains the geometry with calm confidence. Ancient observers built ritual, warning, and interpretation around the event. The eclipse was not random darkness. It was a sign demanding a response. The difference matters, yet the shared emotion matters too. Even now, people gather under eclipses with cameras, glasses, awe, and nervous laughter. The sky still knows how to make us feel small. You hear sandals on the stair behind you. Another observer arrives, as carrying a tablet and stylus. The lamp flame bends in the breeze. A note is made. Perhaps it records a lunar date, a star rising, or a condition in the sky. Perhaps it joins a chain of observations older than the person writing it. That chain is the hidden technological achievement. Prediction does not begin with machines. It begins with comparison across time. If something happened when a sign appeared, perhaps it may happen again. If Venus returns after a known interval, perhaps her future return can be expected. If the moon follows counted phases, then time itself has a structure. From there, the mind travels far, calendars become more accurate. Rituals become more scheduled. Agriculture becomes more coordinated. Kings claim to rule beneath ordered heavens. The old city becomes synchronized with the sky. This is one of the deepest roots of modern technological life. Synchronization. Your phone, clock, bank transfer, train, satellite signal, and calendar all depend on shared time. Without shared time, modern systems become clumsy very quickly. The ancient observers would not know those objects, but they would know the need. A city must agree when something happens. A temple must agree when a festival begins. A worker must know when labor is due. A ruler must know when a campaign season opens. Time becomes public. Time becomes counted. Time becomes enforceable. The roof grows cooler. You draw your garment closer and listen to the city settle into sleep. The stars do not sleep. That is part of their power. They appear to watch while humans disappear into dreams. Perhaps this is why prophecy so often rises from the heavens. The stars seem older than kings. They seem untouched by taxes, arguments, sickness, and spilled beer. They shine above every human system, yet every human system looks to them for order. There is comfort in that. There is also unease. If heaven is ordered, then disorder on Earth feels like a failure to read properly. If cycles exist, then disaster may be anticipated. If disaster may be anticipated, someone may be blamed for missing the sign. Prediction gives power, but power invites responsibility. The observer marks another detail. The lamp trembles. The moon crosses a thin cloud and emerges unchanged. You realize that the ancient sky watchers are not merely looking up. They are building a bridge between recurrence and control. They are teaching civilization that the future may have a rhythm. Modern technology will one day carry that belief into weather models, navigation systems, financial forecasts, medical monitoring, and artificial intelligence. But here, the belief begins with naked eyes, patient memory, and clay beneath the hand. The stars remain above the mud-brick city, bright and distant. They offer no simple answer. They give pattern and leave interpretation to the restless human mind. The night sky fades, and the city returns from darkness by small degrees. At first, there is only the soft grey line of roofs against the east. Then the lamps vanish one by one. Then the first human sounds rise from courtyards, alleys, and animal pens. A gate creaks open. A woman shakes dust from a woven mat. A potter touches yesterday's vessels and judges whether they are ready for fire. The smell of breakfast smoke enters the streets, mixed with damp straw and old clay. You move through this waking city with one question following quietly behind you. What did ancient people imagine tools could become? Not what they actually built, not what archaeologists can hold in a careful hand, but what did they dream tools might do once divine power touched them? This is where the machine dream begins before machines truly exist. Not as iron engines, not as wheels within wheels, not as wires, pistons, screens, or engines breathing smoke. It begins as wonder around objects that act with unusual force, a divine weapon that strikes beyond ordinary reach, a sacred boat that travels through realms, a tablet that fixes destiny, a garment, crown, seal, or measuring cord that changes the authority of its holder. Ancient myth is filled with tools that are more than tools. They are extensions of will. They allow a being to command distance, matter, status, weather, fate, or fear. In that sense, they are poetic ancestors of automation. They are not machines in the modern mechanical sense. Still, they carry the desire that machines later satisfy. Let the object do what the body cannot. Let the tool extend the hand beyond its natural limit. Let command travel farther than the voice. That wish is old, older than bronze, older than writing, older, perhaps, than any city wall. Mainstream research on Mesopotamian myth, including work studied at institutions such as Yale, Oxford, and the University of Pennsylvania, confirms that divine objects often appear as carriers of authority and cosmic order. They are not casual decorations in the story. They organize relationships between gods, kings, cities, and the world itself. A crown does not merely sit on a head. It marks permission. A scepter does not merely rest in a hand. It concentrates command. A measuring line does not merely draw distance. It imagines space as something that can be ordered. Here, technology is symbolic before it is mechanical. You enter a workshop near the edge of a temple district. The morning light falls on copper, stone, wood, bitumen, and reed. A craftsperson lifts a polished tool and turns it toward the door. Its edge catches the light briefly, bright enough to make the eye blink. Nearby, a drill bites slowly into stone with patient circular pressure. A carved bead emerges after long labor, tiny and precise. There is no automation here. There is skill, repetition, friction, and time. Yet the dream of ease must have existed. How could it not? Every tired hand imagines a tool that works faster. Every aching back imagines a burden that lifts itself. Every ruler imagines an order that obeys without delay. Every temple imagines a system that gathers offerings without confusion. The machine begins as a fantasy of obedient matter. A quirky fringe tidbit often grows from these mythic objects. Some modern interpreters claim that references to divine weapons, luminous objects, or tablets of destiny preserve memories of advanced technology. Most historians treat those claims with caution because mythic language is symbolic, ritual, and poetic. But the fascination survives for a reason. The objects in these stories feel powerful, portable, and strangely functional. They do things. They do not merely decorate the scene. They control outcomes. They distribute fate. They open paths between realms. They let divine intention move through an object. That is enough to stir the modern imagination. You pause beside a wooden frame where threads hang in vertical lines. A weaver works with a rhythm so steady that the movement seems almost mechanical. Hands pass, separate, tighten, and return. The pattern appears slowly, one crossing at a time. Textile work is one of humanity's great technologies. Though people rarely give it the glory of metal, it turns fibre into cloth, cloth into warmth, status, trade, ritual, and identity. The loom itself is a kind of ordered repetition. It does not think, it does not choose, but it guides action into pattern. This is another quiet ancestor of automation, a device that constrains motion so the human body can produce regular complexity. That phrase sounds like a modern engineering note, but the workshop understands it perfectly. Pattern is labour made repeatable. The potter's wheel offers another glimpse. Clay spins beneath wet hands. The vessel rises as if pulled upward by invisible instruction. The wheel does not replace the potter. It extends the potter's control. It turns irregular pressure into smoother form. Watching it, you sense why ancient people might imagine divine craft as something beyond normal effort. God does not merely make. A god makes with perfect method. A god's tool obeys without slipping. A god's measurement is not approximate. A god's command enters matter and finds no resistance. That is the dream. Open scholarly debate continues over how to interpret divine instruments in Sumerian and wider Mesopotamian literature. Some historians read them as symbols of royal and temple authority. Others see them as poetic reflections of real crafts, weapons, and administrative tools. A few scholars explore whether mythic objects reveal ancient ideas about agency, where power can reside in things as well as persons. The debate matters because ancient objects were not always passive in the imagination. A seal could authorize, a statue could receive offerings, a tablet could preserve destiny, a weapon could carry divine terror. The boundary between object and actor was not always sharp. Modern technology has made that boundary blurry again. A device reminds you. A system approves you. An algorithm recommends, denies, predicts, sorts, and watches. People still create the system, of course, yet once created, it seems to act. It answers before a human face appears. It directs movement through cities, markets, schools, hospitals, and homes. The ancient dream of a tool with agency has returned wearing glass and code. You step outside the workshop and enter a courtyard where a cart is being repaired. The wheel, simple and magnificent, leans against a wall. Its wood is worn at the rim. Someone has wrapped part of it for strength. The wheel is so familiar that it almost becomes invisible. Yet there it is, one of the great agreements between human thought and matter. A circle turns. Weight moves. Distance changes. Labour becomes less brutal, though never disappears. The wheel does not abolish suffering. It negotiates with it. That may be the most honest definition of technology. A negotiation with difficulty. Not a miracle, not salvation. A bargain. Ancient Sumerian and Mesopotamian cultures knew wheels, carts, boats, ploughs, kilns, seals, scales, and irrigation works. These were not modern machines, but they transformed human capacity. They multiplied movement, production, storage, and command. In myth, the same imagination grows larger. Divine tools multiply destiny itself. The small human pattern becomes cosmic. You hear a hammer strike metal. The sound rings sharply, then fades into the morning bustle. A child watches the craftsperson with wide eyes. The child may not know the word invention, but the child knows transformation. Stone becomes bead, clay becomes jar, fibre becomes cloth, ore becomes tool. A sound mind might say that it is enough wonder for one civilization, but humans are rarely satisfied with enough. They ask what else might obey. Can water obey? Can time obey? Can distance obey? Can other people obey? Can the future obey? There is the unsettling side of the machine dream. Every tool that extends human power also extends human desire. And desire does not always become wise just because it becomes efficient. The ancient myths seem to know this. Divine objects are often contested, stolen, guarded, or misused. Power must be held by the proper hands or disorder follows. That theme is old and still very awake. Modern stories tell the same lesson with different costumes. A dangerous invention, a stolen code, a weapon too strong for its maker, a system that escapes simple control. The fear is not new. It is clay old. It is star old. It is temple old. As midday approaches, the workshop heat grows thicker. Metal, ash, damp clay, and human sweat blend into one heavy smell. The craftspeople continue, patient and practical. They are not dreaming of artificial intelligence as satellites or automated factories. They are solving the problems placed in front of them. A sharper edge, a smoother wheel, a stronger seal, a better jar, a straighter wall, and yet, from these modest improvements, the technological imagination gathers force. The dream before machines is not a blueprint. It is a direction. Make matter answer. Make effort repeat. Make command travel. Make memory endure. Make the invisible manageable. You leave the workshop as the city brightens into the full day. Behind you, tools wait on benches and hooks. Some are ordinary, some are beautiful. Some will break before sunset. None looks like prophecy at first glance. But perhaps prophecy is sometimes hidden inside repetition. A wheel turning, a loom tightening, a seal rolling, a stylus pressing, a hand learning how to make the world respond. By afternoon, the city's noise gathers around the places where decisions are made. The streets near the temple district feel busier, tighter, and more watchful. People pass with baskets, animals, sealed jars, bundles of wool, and tablets pressed into their hands. A guard stands beside a doorway, his spear upright, his eyes trained on movement. Inside, the air smells of clay dust, old straw, human breath, and stored grain. This is not the battlefield, yet power is everywhere. It sits in the doorway. It rests on the seal. It waits in the tablet. It hides in the list. You enter a space where law, labour, and authority begin to share the same room. The walls are plain mud brick, but the activity inside is not simple. A dispute over a field boundary may be heard. A debt may be recorded. A delivery may be checked. A worker's ration may be confirmed. A seal impression may decide whether a jar moves forward or stays shut. Here, order is not an idea floating above life. Order is a procedure. It is performed by people who know which sign matters and which person can approve it. That may be one of the earliest lessons of organized society. Power becomes stronger when it learns to write itself down. Mainstream historical research confirms that Mesopotamian cities developed sophisticated administrative and legal traditions over time. Later law collections, including those from rulers such as Ur-Nammu and Hammurabi, reveal a world where authority sought public form through written judgment. Scholars at Yale, Oxford, and the University of Chicago often place these legal traditions within broader systems of kingship, temple economy, and social regulation. The details vary by period and city, but the deeper pattern is clear. Rules become more durable when they enter writing. A spoken command can vanish with the voice. A written order waits. It can be copied, displayed, stored, consulted, and used against someone. That is useful. It is also dangerous. You stand near a scribe who is preparing a document. The reed stylus moves carefully and the tablet takes shape. There is something intimate about legal writing. A human conflict becomes compressed into signs. Anger becomes wording. Property becomes description. Obligation becomes a line. A witness becomes a name. The mess of life becomes manageable because the tablet refuses to include everything. It chooses what the system needs. A man nearby argues quietly with another man. Their voices held low because the room discourages drama. Perhaps it is about a loan. Perhaps a boundary stone was moved. Perhaps an animal was not returned. Ancient complaints are often surprisingly familiar. Someone borrowed something. Someone promised something. Someone failed to deliver something. Civilization begins, and almost immediately people need paperwork. There is a comfort in that, if you like your comfort slightly dusty. Kingship rises within this world not merely as personal strength, but as organized recognition. A king must appear as protector, judge, builder, warrior, and servant of divine order. Royal inscriptions often present rulers as restorers of temples, diggers of canals, defenders of justice, and chosen figures under the gods. The image is carefully constructed. Power wants to look necessary. It wants to look like the answer to chaos. In Sumer and later Mesopotamia, law and kingship are deeply tied to the promise of order. Flood, famine, invasion, debt, violence, and disorder are always near enough to be imagined. A ruler claims to stand between the city and collapse. That claim can be sincere, strategic, or both. Usually both. You walk toward a courtyard where a public inscription may once have been visible. Not everyone could read it, of course. Literacy was limited, specialized, and socially powerful. But public writing still mattered. Even unread, it had presence. The carved or impressed sign declared that authority had taken form. It said the ruler's voice could outlast his breath. It said command could remain after the speaker walked away. This is where law becomes a technology of distance. It allows power to travel beyond the body of the ruler. It allows institutions to act without constant personal contact. It allows a decision made in one place to shape behavior elsewhere. Modern people recognize this instantly. A law code, a contract, a policy, a permit, a password, a database entry, an algorithmic rule, each carries authority across space. Each says that somewhere a system has already decided. A quirky fringe tidbit sometimes attaches itself to ancient law collections, because some laws appear severe, precise, and highly structured. Certain popular writers imagine them as remnants of a lost technological command system. That claim is not supported by the evidence. Yet it points toward a real feeling. Ancient law can feel mechanical, not because it came from machines, but because it tries to make human consequences predictable. If this happens, then that follows. If a boundary is violated, then a penalty comes. If a debt is unpaid, then a remedy appears. This structure is not a computer program, but it has a conditional logic. Human society learns to speak in if and then. That is a profound step. Open, scholarly debate continues over how far ancient law collections functioned as enforceable codes rather than royal statements of justice. Some historians view them as practical legal references. Others emphasize their symbolic role in presenting the king as righteous guardian. A few scholars argue that they did both, depending on context, audience, and institution. The debate matters because written law is never only about rules. It is also about image. It shows what power wants people to believe power is doing. In the room around you, the law is not abstract at all. A woman may need a claim recognized. A labourer may need a ration confirmed. A family may need inheritance defined. A merchant may need a debt acknowledged. A temple may need property protected. The tablet makes these relationships legible to authority. Legibility brings protection. Legibility also brings exposure. Once a person is visible to a system, the system can help, tax, punish, summon, account, and constrain. That is the double edge. You feel it in the cool shade of the administrative building. Outside, sunlight burns the street white. Inside, the tablets accumulate. The city is learning not only to remember goods, but to remember duties. It remembers who owes. It remembers who owns. It remembers who witnessed. It remembers who failed. The memory is not emotional. That may be why it is trusted. That may also be why it is feared. Modern surveillance does not begin with cameras in this ancient world. It begins with records, seals, witnesses, and offices. It begins with the ability to make life traceable. Of course, the comparison must remain gentle. A Sumerian temple archive is not a modern surveillance network. No one here is tracking your sleeping habits through a glowing device on your wrist. Small mercy. Still, the old principle is visible. Power grows when information gathers. Power stabilizes when rules can be repeated. Power expands when distant people behave according to recorded expectations. You look at the seal again. A tiny carved cylinder, beautiful and severe. When rolled across clay, it creates a scene that repeats perfectly each time. It is art, identity, security, and command in one object. The person who owns the seal does not need to draw the image again. The tool repeats authority for him. Repetition is central to control. A law repeated becomes expectation. A seal repeated becomes trust. A tax repeated becomes normal. A schedule repeated becomes life. This is how systems become invisible. People stop noticing the structure because they live inside it. The ancient city runs on such repetition. Morning labour, measured grain. Sealed jar, written debt, temple offering, royal order, judgment, repair, return. You begin to sense that prophecy about technology might not warn only of tools becoming powerful. It might warn of systems becoming ordinary, because once a system feels normal, people may forget to ask who designed it. They may forget who benefits. They may forget who carries the weight. The shadows lengthen inside the administrative room. A scribe stores a tablet among others. The argument near the doorway has ended, or at least become quieter. Someone leaves satisfied, someone else leaves with tight shoulders. Law has done its work, which does not always mean everyone feels justice. That, too, remains familiar. The city continues beyond the doorway. Carts move, children shout, animals complain, and the river carries its brown water through the canals. But beneath all that life, rules are settling like another layer of clay. The ancient world is not only building temples and storing grain, it is building procedures. It is building command that can survive absence. It is building a social machine. No gears turn inside it. No engine burns. Yet it moves people, goods, time, punishment, and permission. The prophecy hidden here is sober and calm. Technology rises beside authority because both promise control over uncertainty. One controls matter, one controls behavior. Together, they can build cities. Together, they can also build cages. The scribe wipes his stylus. The guard shifts at the door. The seal rests quietly, ready to speak again without words. The air changes as memory turns toward water. Not the careful water of canals, not the measured water that slides politely between fields. This is another kind of water, older in feeling and harder to command. It is the water that rises beyond expectation, enters streets, breaks walls, carries doors away, and leaves silence behind. You stand on a plain where the horizon seems too low. The river looks calm now, brown and slow beneath the sky. Reeds tremble along its edge. Birds lift from the marshes in quick, dark bursts. A fisherman pulls his net from the shallows and shakes loose silver movement into a basket. Everything appears ordinary, which is exactly how disaster often begins. Ancient flood traditions occupy a powerful place in Mesopotamian memory. Sumerian and later Babylonian texts preserve stories of a great deluge, a chosen survivor, divine decision, and life remade after catastrophe. Archaeological excavations at sites such as Uruk revealed flood deposits. Though scholars treat them as local events rather than proof of one universal flood, researchers connected with the University of Pennsylvania, Oxford, and other major institutions have long studied these traditions as a meeting point between geology, memory, myth, and urban fear. The result is not simple. It is more interesting than simple. A river flood can be local and still world-ending to those who live through it. If your house, field, family records, seed stores, animals, and temple offerings vanish beneath water, then the whole world has ended enough. The flood does not need to cover every mountain. It only needs to erase everything you can reach. You imagine the first signs. The river runs higher than expected. The water darkens with silt. Officials speak more often near the bank. Workers strengthen embankments with baskets, mud, and nervous speed. Animals become restless. The smell changes too, growing thick with rot, wet reeds, and churned earth. Rain falls somewhere upstream, perhaps far beyond what the city can see. That is the cruelty of river systems. A decision made by weather in one place becomes a disaster in another. The ancient city understands many things, but it cannot see every horizon. A flood reveals the limit of information. It shows the failure of prediction. It turns the proud grid of fields into a sheet of moving brown force. For people who have built their world on measurement, this is terrifying. A canal can be cleared. A ration can be counted. A tablet can be sealed. But the river, when it rises too far, refuses the archive. It does not care who owns the field. It does not respect the boundary stone. It does not pause for legal procedure, which is rude but historically consistent. The flood tradition carries that emotional truth. Civilization rests on control, yet control rests on conditions that may change. The ground beneath the order is softer than it looks. In Sumerian tradition, Kingship itself is sometimes divided into periods before and after the flood. That idea creates a broken timeline. There is a world before catastrophe. There is a world after catastrophe. Between them lies water, silence, and loss. The Sumerian king list, known from later copies, famously presents rulers with impossibly long reigns before the flood and more human-scale kings after it. Mainstream scholars do not treat those reign lengths as literal history. They read them as ideological, mythic, and symbolic. Still, the structure matters. It suggests that ancient people imagine time as interrupted, not smooth, not safe, not guaranteed. A quirky fringe tidbit often swims through this material, usually with great confidence. Some modern writers claim the strange pre-flood reigns prove forgotten, advanced civilizations or non-human rulers. That claim leaps far beyond what the evidence can bear, yet the strangeness of the numbers remains fascinating. Why make the early kings so vast? Why stretch their reigns into the realm of impossibility? Perhaps the past becomes larger when seen through loss. Perhaps memory magnifies what the flood has taken. Perhaps ancient writers wanted to say that the world before catastrophe belonged to a different order. Open scholarly debate continues over the purpose of these pre-flood traditions. Some historians interpret them as royal ideology, arranging kingship into a sacred sequence. Others see flood stories as cultural memories of environmental trauma in river societies. A few scholars explore how myth turns recurring disasters into a single narrative of cosmic reset. The debate does not need a winner tonight. It is enough to feel the pressure inside the story. Water comes. The old order breaks. Life must begin again, carrying fragments. You walk through an imagined city after the flood water recedes. The mud is deep and foul. Broken reeds cling to walls. A storage jar lies on its side and cracked open and packed with silt. A dead tree branch rests where a doorway used to be. The smell is heavy, sour, and unforgettable. People move slowly because the ground itself resists them. They search for tools, animals, relatives, tablets, seeds, and anything still useful. The archive room may be ruined. The grain may be spoiled. The canal may be choked. A god statue may need cleansing. A family may have lost its house, and the record proving what it owned. That last loss is quieter than hunger, but dangerous. When records vanish, claims vanish. When claims vanish, order becomes negotiable. Floods do not only destroy buildings, they destroy certainty. This is where broken timelines become more than myth. A society after catastrophe must decide what to remember and what to rebuild. It must ask whether old systems failed because people sinned. Gods chose, rulers neglected, rivers changed, or chance simply arrived with muddy feet. Different answers create different futures. If the flood is divine judgment, rituals must change. If it is poor management, canals must change. If it is natural cycle, predictions must improve. If it is mystery, stories must hold the fear until people can sleep again. Ancient flood memory may preserve all of these responses at once. A story can carry grief, warning, theology, practical wisdom, and political meaning in the same vessel. That is why it lasts. You hear water dripping from a damaged roof. A woman scrapes mud from a bowl with the edge of a reed. A man lifts a broken tablet and tries to read the surviving marks. Perhaps it records grain. Perhaps labour. Perhaps nothing that matters now. Yet he keeps it. Humans save fragments after disaster because fragments argue against total erasure. A broken tablet says something existed. A cracked seal says someone had authority. A half-buried wall says a home stood here. The future begins from remains. Modern technology is also haunted by flood memory. Data can vanish. Power grids can fail. Servers can drown. Cities can go dark. Screens can become useless glass. Every age believes its systems are stronger than the last, and every disaster politely corrects the arrogance. Ancient Sumer knew this correction in the body. The river gives abundance. The river takes it back. Water is prosperity with teeth. As the day settles over the damaged plain, people begin the slow work of repair. They clear channels. They dry bricks. They gather surviving grain. They rebuild walls with tired hands. A scribe may begin a new record. The first marks after disaster must have felt different. Not just administration, defiance. To write again is to say the world has not ended completely. To measure again is to say pattern may return. To build again is to trust that tomorrow can hold weight. Perhaps this is why flood stories are never only about destruction. They're also about continuity. A boat survives, a seed survives, a name survives, a ritual survives, a story survives. The old timeline breaks, but it does not disappear. It becomes layered, like silt beneath a city. You look toward the river in the lowering light. It is calm again, almost innocent. That calm is unsettling because you know what it can become. The Sumerian imagination seems to understand that technology and prophecy both arise from this fragile condition. Humans build systems against uncertainty. Then catastrophe reminds them that every system has a boundary. The flood is the ancient teacher of limits. It says to count what you can, measure what you can, seal what you can, but do not mistake record for control. The water moves in the distance, brown beneath the evening sky. It carries reflections of reeds or birds and fading firelight. No conclusion settles over it, only the sense that time itself has been washed, broken, and begun again. After the memory of water, the city feels more secretive. Its walls stand in the evening light with a tired kind of dignity. Mud brick surfaces hold stains from rain, smoke, hands, repairs, and seasons no tablet fully explains. The streets are dry again, but the thought of drowning remains beneath them. People continue with ordinary tasks, because ordinary tasks are how fear is domesticated. A woman sweeps the threshold of her house. A boy carries reeds toward a workshop. A scribe wraps a tablet in cloth before placing it with others. A priest passes through a doorway without hurry, his garment brushing against the dust. The world resumes, yet some knowledge never returns to innocence. Once a city imagines that time can break, it begins to guard certain things more carefully. Names, rituals, measures, stories, warnings, and perhaps, in darker corners of the imagination, forbidden knowledge. You follow a narrow passage near a temple storehouse, where lamps burn low against the thickening dusk. The air smells of oil smoke, clay, wool, and faint incense trapped in old walls. A carved seal hangs from a cord at an official's waist. A tablet rests under his arm. He moves as if the object is light, yet the authority inside it is heavy. The hidden question enters quietly. Who is allowed to know? Every complex society answers that question, even when it pretends not to. In Sumer and later Mesopotamia, trained specialists guarded certain forms of knowledge. Scribes learned signs, numbers, lists, hymns, rituals, and administrative formulas. Diviners learned how to interpret omens. Priests preserved temple procedures. Officials controlled records. Mainstream scholarship at institutions such as Yale, Oxford, and the University of Pennsylvania confirms that literacy in ancient Mesopotamia was specialized, powerful, and closely connected to administration and elite culture. Writing was not spread evenly through society. It belonged to trained hands. That matters, because a tablet is not powerful only because it exists. It is powerful because most people cannot read it. Knowledge becomes a gate when only some people hold the key. You enter a small room where tablets are stacked in baskets and along low shelves. The light is poor. A single lamp trembles, making the signs appear to shift across the clay. An apprentice sits with a practice tablet, copying a list of words with careful discomfort. Nearby, an older scribe corrects him in a voice low enough to feel more severe than shouting. The lesson is practical, but also ceremonial in its own way. The apprentice is not merely learning how to write. He is entering a class of people who can make absence present. He can summon a field through description. He can preserve a debt without a witness. He can speak for a temple, palace, or a dead transaction. That is no small magic. The modern word magic can be misleading, of course. It makes the ancient world sound naive. Yet the old categories were not so neatly separated. Ritual, writing, healing, astronomy, mathematics, prayer, law, and medicine often touched one another. The learned person moved among them with different tools, but not always with different assumptions. A sign had force, a name mattered, a formula could be effective, a properly performed act might influence the visible and invisible world. In such a society, knowledge did not merely describe reality. Knowledge participated in reality. That idea is strange to modern ears, but not entirely gone. A legal document can change your life. A medical diagnosis can alter your future. A password can open a bank account. A line of code can move money, lock doors, or guide machines. Words still do things. Signs still act. We simply dress the power differently. A quirky fringe tidbit appears here, softly but insistently. Some modern writers claim that Sumerian tablets conceal lost scientific secrets, perhaps advanced astronomy, energy systems, or instructions from non-human teachers. Mainstream historians do not accept those claims as proven. Most such readings depend on mistranslation, selective quotation, or imagination doing acrobatics in a very shiny costume. Still, the fascination itself is worth noticing. People sensed that ancient writing carried restricted power. They sensed that the tablet room was not just a place of dusty accounting. They sensed that knowledge, once written, can outlive its keepers and trouble later minds. The fringe exaggerates the secret, but the existence of specialized knowledge is real. Open scholarly debate continues over how far scribal knowledge was controlled by institutions rather than families, workshops, or local schools. Some historians emphasize temple and palace settings. Others point to private archives, household transmission, and varied paths into literacy. A few scholars explore how scribal identity shaped the way knowledge was classified, copied, and protected. The debate matters because the ancient archive was not a single locked vault. It was a landscape of access. Some doors were formal, some were social, some were economic, some were simply made of time because learning science took years. You watch the apprentice press another wedge into clay. His hand hesitates before the next mark. The older scribe waits. The silence is long enough to become uncomfortable. Then the boy corrects himself and continues. There is something moving in that tiny moment. Forbidden knowledge does not always need a curse. Sometimes it is forbidden by difficulty. Sometimes the gate is not guarded by monsters, but by grammar. A person who cannot endure the training never reaches the archive. A person who cannot read the signs remains outside the recorded world. A person who cannot produce the proper formula cannot speak in the voice authority recognizes. The hidden world is made not only by secrecy, but by education. You move from the tablet room into a courtyard where evening has deepened. A ritual specialist prepares materials near a basin. Water, so oil, herbs, wool, small vessels, perhaps a figurine. The exact ritual belongs to a specific tradition you do not need to pretend to know fully. But the atmosphere is clear. Actions must follow order. Words must be spoken correctly. Objects must be placed with care. A mistake might weaken the result. This is knowledge as procedure. The modern laboratory would not recognize the theology, but it would recognize the discipline of sequence. First this, then that. Measure carefully. Observe. Record. Repeat. The comparison must stay humble, because ritual and experimental science are different systems of truth, yet both reveal a human trust in ordered action. Do the right thing in the right way, and a hidden condition may change. That is one of the oldest forms of technical thinking. A formula is an action compressed into language. A ritual is a technology of meaning. A spell in the ancient sense is not random muttering. It is structured speech with purpose. You feel how easily such knowledge could be feared. If words can affect the world, then words must be controlled. If names carry power, then names must be protected. If rituals alter danger, then specialists become necessary. If specialists are necessary, society gives them status and suspicion. The learned person stands close to power and close to danger. This is where the idea of forbidden knowledge becomes emotionally believable. Not because tablets prove secret machines, because knowledge itself changes relationships. The person who understands a system can guide it. The person who guides it can benefit from it. The person excluded from it may feel watched, judged, or helpless. Modern technology repeats this pattern with astonishing politeness. A user touches a screen. Somewhere behind the surface, systems decide. Most people do not know the code. They do not know the data structure. They do not know why one message appears and another disappears. The interface smiles. The mechanism remains hidden. Ancient Sumer had no such screens, but it knew the social shape of hidden systems. A temple door, a sealed archive, a trained scribe, an omen expert. a ritual formula, a mark that means nothing to the untrained eye and everything to the person inside the system. The lamps in the courtyard burn lower. A breeze carries the scent of reeds from the canal. The city becomes softer, its hard administrative edges dissolving into night. Yet the secrecy remains, not dark in a dramatic sense, not evil, simply layered. Human societies are layered because knowledge is layered. What children know is not what scribes know. What workers know is not what priests know. What rulers know is not what petitioners know. What the record knows may be different from what the body remembers. You return in thought to the clay tablet held under an official's arm. It may contain a mundane account. It may list offerings. It may record something nobody would call mysterious. Yet for someone who cannot read it, the tablet is a silent authority. It contains a decision without revealing itself. That feeling survives across centuries. The sealed document, the unreadable code, the private file, the hidden calculation, the ancient prophecy of technology may live here as much as anywhere, not in the claim that old scribes knew modern devices, not in the fantasy that every myth hides machinery, but in the recognition that knowledge creates distance, between expert and outsider, between ruler and worker, between record and memory, between system and person. As night covers the temple district, the archive room goes dark. The tablets remain on their shelves, mute and durable. No flame touches them now. No hand reads them. Still, they hold their power. Perhaps forbidden knowledge is not always something dangerous by nature. Perhaps it becomes dangerous when it's hoarded, misunderstood, worshipped, or used without humility. The clay waits in silence, and somewhere beyond the walls, the stars look down like signs no one has fully learned to read. Morning returns through a thin veil of dust, and the city becomes visible in layers. First come the roofs, low and flat beneath the pale sky. Then the temple terraces rise, their bricks holding the colour of dried earth. Then the streets appear, carrying animals, workers, baskets, jars, children, and smoke. Everything feels physical. Everything has weight, clay underfoot, wooden doorways, stone in weights, reed in baskets. Yet beneath this world of touch, another world is forming. It is made of signs. You stand near a merchant's doorway where small objects lie on a woven mat. Clay tokens, seal stones, cord, a lump of soft clay ready to close around a promise. The merchant's assistant checks shapes against goods waiting nearby. A small cone may stand for a measure of grain. A sphere may stand for another commodity. A disc may mean something agreed upon by people trained to see meaning in form. The objects are tiny, almost humble, but they are part of a deep human transformation. Matter is beginning to represent other matter. A thing is becoming a sign for a thing. Archaeological research associated with the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Chicago has shown that tokens, sealings, and early tablets formed part of the long road toward writing and accounting in Mesopotamia. The story is not a sudden invention by one brilliant person sitting under a palm tree. That would be convenient, and history rarely has such good manners. Instead, it is gradual. A token becomes a record becomes a sign becomes writing becomes administration, memory, literature, law, and prophecy. One small abstraction opens into a civilization of symbols. You look down at the clay token in your imagined hand. It is not impressive at first. It does not glow or sing. It does not claim to change the world. Still, it performs a quiet miracle. It allows something absent to be present. A flock may be far away, yet a token can speak of it. A jar may be sealed in a storeroom, yet a mark can summon its value. A measure of grain may be promised for the future, yet a record can hold that promise now. This is the root of abstraction. An abstraction is the bridge from clay seal to silicon chip. Modern digital technology depends on the same ancient leap. Though it travels far beyond clay, a bit does not look like a song, a face, a map, a payment, or a memory, yet inside the right system it can stand for all of them. A mark on clay is not a sheep. A binary signal is not a voice. Both are agreements that matter can carry meaning. That is the shared dream. You walk past a ceiling pressed around a cord. It once secured a container, a bundle, or a doorway. If broken, it would reveal interference. If intact, it promised that no one had tampered with what lay inside. Security begins here in a form your hands can feel. A seal is rolled across the soft surface, leaving a procession of tiny figures. The image repeats with mechanical grace. The cylinder turns once and identity unfolds. There is beauty in that repetition. There is also authority. The mark says, this belongs to someone. This passed through a system. This was closed under witness. A quirky fringe tidbit sometimes appears around these seals and tokens. Some modern enthusiasts describe them as the first blockchain, which is charmingly dramatic and also too modern for the evidence. No ancient scribe was sitting by the Euphrates designing decentralized finance, mercifully. Yet the comparison points toward a real principle. A community needs trusted records when goods, promises, and authority move beyond immediate personal memory. Tokens and seals helped create trust across distance. They made exchange more reliable in a world where spoken claims could fade like smoke. Open scholarly debate continues over the precise path from tokens to writing. Some historians emphasize the work of accounting and economic administration. Others highlight the role of social hierarchy, temple management, and expanding urban complexity. A few scholars explore whether symbolic systems developed differently across regions before converging into written forms. The debate remains alive because the evidence comes in fragments. Small clay pieces, seal impressions, early tablets with signs that still feel half pictorial, half abstract. The beginning of writing is not a line, it is a fog slowly taking shape. You move toward a market area where exchange fills the morning with texture. Dates are piled in baskets. Fish lie on reed mats, silver fading in the heat. Wool is bundled and tied. Copper glints darkly near a craftsman's stall. A woman tests the weight of a jar before agreeing to trade. A man objects to a measure and receives a look that suggests this argument is not original. The entire market depends on shared recognition. What counts as enough? What counts as fair? What counts as payment? What counts as proof? Symbols help answer those questions. They do not remove distrust, but they give distrust a place to negotiate. That is one of civilization's quieter achievements. It does not make people perfect. It gives imperfect people tools to continue dealing with one another. The modern world does the same with contracts, receipts, bank records, signatures, identity cards, and digital confirmations. A purchase becomes a line in a system. A salary becomes numbers in an account. A message becomes stored data. A face becomes pixels. A location becomes coordinates. The old clay token has become invisible and electric, but the logic remains: represent, store, verify, transfer. Remember, you pause beside a scribe who records a transaction. His stylus presses into clay with practiced economy. The marks are not drawings anymore in the simple sense. They are signs within a system. They require training. They reduce the world into forms that can travel through time. That reduction is powerful because it makes complexity manageable. It is also risky because every reduction leaves something out. A jar of oil becomes a quantity, but not the smell of sesame. A worker becomes a name, but not the ache in his shoulders. A field becomes a measure, but not the sound of wind through barley. Modern data has the same limitation. It captures brilliantly and incompletely. It can store your steps, but not always your purpose. It can count your sleep, but not fully know your dreams. It can measure attention, but not always understand wonder. The ancient archive already whispers this warning. A sign is never the whole thing. It is a doorway, not the world. The sun rises higher and the market grows louder. A donkey complains with theatrical sincerity. Someone laughs near a stack of baskets. A seal owner bends over clay, pressing his authority into matter. The scene feels ordinary, but abstraction is everywhere. Value is being carried by signs. Identity is being repeated by images. Trust is being stored in hardened surfaces. The ancient city is learning to operate through representations. That is the true road to modern technology. Not a sudden jump from ziggurat to computer. Not a secret prophecy hidden in a temple chamber. A long habit. A habit of letting signs stand for things. A habit of trusting symbols enough to move food, labour, wealth, and power through them. A habit of building worlds inside marks. Mainstream historical fact gives this transformation its weight. Early Mesopotamian administration used tokens, seals, and tablets to manage goods and institutions. From such practical beginnings came writing systems that later preserved myth, law, astronomy, medicine, literature, and royal memory. The first symbolic tools were not small because they were unimportant. They were small because civilization often begins with something that fits in the palm. You feel the clay token warm against your skin. It could be lost easily, stepped on, swept away, dropped into mud, yet multiplied across thousands of transactions. Such objects taught the human mind a new confidence. The world can be encoded. The world can be represented by signs. The world can be rebuilt in miniature, then acted upon from that miniature. This is exactly what modern systems do at enormous scale. A map is not a city, but it guides you through one. A model is not the weather, but it helps predict rain. A bank balance is not metal in your hand, but it shapes what doors open. A computer file is not a memory, but it can carry one across oceans. From clay seal to silicon chip, the path is long but not mysterious. It is the unfolding of abstraction through new materials. Clay dries, parchment folds, paper stacks, magnetic fields shift, circuits open and close, cloud servers hum in buildings far from the people whose lives they hold. The ancient prophecy here is not about devices, it is about translation. Human beings translate reality into signs, then begin to live according to those signs. The market continues, the seal turns, the tablet dries, the token returns to a basket. No one pauses to celebrate the birth of symbolic civilization. They are too busy making sure the grain count is correct. Still, under the simple noise of trade, a future is forming. It will become mathematics, writing, money, code, and digital identity. It will become the invisible architecture of modern life. It begins with clay, pressure, trust, and need. As the day brightens, you step away from the market and look back at the city. Mud brick walls, canals, storerooms, temples, people moving through dust. Nothing appears futuristic, yet the foundation is there. A sign stands for a thing. A record outlives a voice. A seal carries identity beyond the body. A small abstraction learns to rule a large world. The city draws you inward again, toward the sacred district where walls grow thicker. Morning brightness softens beneath gateways, porticos, and shaded passages. The air smells of stored grain, incense ash, wool, date syrup, and damp plaster. Workers pass through controlled entrances carrying baskets, jars, tools, and folded cloth. Each person seems ordinary, yet the movement around them feels arranged. Nothing flows entirely at random here. The temple gathers. It gathers food, labour, animals, offerings, records, songs, officials, and hope. It is not only a place for prayer, it is a structure that pulls the city into rhythm. You stand near a broad courtyard where clay tablets are checked beside incoming goods. A goat resists being led through a gate with impressive dedication to chaos. Someone curses softly, then remembers where he is and lowers his voice. A scribe watches without sympathy. The temple does not stop for one stubborn animal. It absorbs the disorder and writes it down. That is the feeling here. Everything arrives messy. Everything must leave categorized. The temple becomes an ancient engine, not because it contains machinery, but because it converts movement into order. Offerings come in. Rations go out. Labor is assigned. Storage is maintained. Ritual is performed. Records are created. Belief and administration turn together. Mainstream archaeological research confirms that temples played major economic and social roles in early Mesopotamian cities. Scholars at the University of Chicago, Yale, and Oxford have studied temple institutions as centers of worship, redistribution, craft production, and authority. The exact balance varied by time and place. No single model explains every city. Still, the temple economy remains one of the great organizing forces of the Sumerian world. You can feel that force in the architecture. Rooms cluster around courtyards. Storerooms sit near corridors. Workshops open toward controlled spaces. The building does not merely shelter activity. It directs activity. A person carrying grain knows where to go. A scribe knows where to record. A priest knows where to stand during a ritual. A worker knows which gate allows entry and which one does not. Architecture becomes instruction made of brick. That is technology too. A wall guides the body. A doorway creates permission. A raised platform changes the meaning of a person standing on it. A storehouse concentrates food into institutional power. The temple is not passive. It acts through space. You move slowly through a storeroom where jars stand in rows. Their clay shoulders are marked by seal impressions and labels. Some contain oil. Some may hold grain, beer, dates, or other supplies. The smell is heavy and sweet, mixed with dust and age. In a corner, a worker repairs a damaged basket with quick, practiced fingers. Another person checks a list against what has been delivered. The temple's sacred life depends on such practical labour. A god may receive offerings, but someone must manage the pantry. This is not disrespectful. It is the hidden dignity of maintenance. Every grand system survives through small repeated acts. A quirky fringe tidbit circles around temple architecture with a dramatic cloak. Some modern writers imagine ziggurats as ancient power stations, landing platforms, or energy devices. There is no solid archaeological evidence for those claims. The more grounded interpretation is already fascinating. Ziggurats and temple platforms lifted sacred space above ordinary ground. They made hierarchy visible. They turned religious imagination into urban form. They also required labour, planning, material supply, and administrative coordination on a large scale. That achievement needs no secret generator. Mud brick, belief, and organisation are powerful enough. Open scholarly debate continues over how temples related to households, palaces, and emerging civic institutions. Some historians emphasise temple control over production and redistribution. Others argue that private households, merchants, and local elites also played important roles. A few scholars examine temples as symbolic centres whose economic power changed across centuries. The debate reminds you not to flatten the ancient city into one simple machine. Even engines have many moving parts. The temple is a mechanism, but it is also a place of music, fear, generosity, ambition, and devotion. You enter a space where musicians may once have played during ritual. The sound is absent now, but your mind supplies it. Drums, lyres, voices, perhaps a reed instrument carrying a thin, wavering melody. The floor is swept clean. The air feels cooler. Ritual turns supplies into meaning. Grain is not merely grain when offered. Oil is not merely oil when poured. A lamb is not merely an animal when dedicated. The temple transforms material into relationship. It says the city feeds the god, and the god sustains the city. Whether one reads that as theology, politics, or social imagination, the exchange is profound. It binds heaven and economy together. Modern systems often pretend to have no ritual. They are mistaken. A boardroom has ritual. A courtroom has ritual. A university graduation has ritual. A software launch has ritual. A government ceremony has ritual. People still need repeated forms to make abstract systems feel real. The ancient temple understood this completely. It did not separate ceremony from administration. It made them support one another. The tablet and the offering bowl belong to the same world. You pass a group of workers receiving rations. The distribution is orderly but not gentle. Names are checked. Amounts are measured. Goods are handed over. The people wait, move, receive, and leave. There is relief here, because food matters. There is dependence here, because systems that feed can also withhold. The temple's power is not only spiritual, it is edible. That may be the strongest kind. A person can argue with theology longer than with hunger. The temple engine runs because people need what it controls: water, grain, legitimacy, protection, ritual access, and recorded recognition. The same structure that honors gods also organizes survival. That dual role makes it strong. It also makes it morally complicated. A storehouse can prevent famine if managed well. It can deepen inequality if managed for narrow power. A record can ensure fair distribution. It can also justify exclusion. The engine depends on the character of those who tend it. Perhaps every system does. You step outside into the courtyard again. Sunlight falls across brick paving and the shadows of moving bodies. A priest crosses the space with measured pace. A scribe follows another official through a doorway. Workers unload jars from a cart, their shoulders shining with sweat. A dog slips in, sniffs near a basket, and is quickly chased away. The sacred and ordinary are tangled together so tightly that separating them feels artificial. This is the temple's genius. It makes everyday labour part of cosmic maintenance. It tells the city that sweeping, counting, carrying, singing, sealing, and sacrificing all belong to one pattern. That pattern is what gives the ancient engine its rhythm. Modern technology also thrives on hidden rhythm. Supply chains, payment systems, server maintenance, electrical grids, shipping schedules, medical databases, and food distribution networks. Most people notice them only when they fail. The Sumerian temple economy would understand that too. A system becomes invisible when it works. When it breaks, everyone suddenly becomes a philosopher. The old temple engine is visible tonight because you're allowed to walk slowly through its parts. Storage, measurement, ritual, labour, authority, trust, fear, hope. Each part turns the next. None is sufficient alone. Together, they create a structure larger than any person inside it. That is the true meaning of an engine here. It concentrates energy and redirects it. Human energy, agricultural energy, emotional energy, sacred energy, administrative energy. The prophecy of technology grows clearer in this place. Future machines will do something similar with fuel, electricity, code, and data. They will gather inputs and produce outputs. They will reshape labour. They will create dependence. They will appear neutral while carrying the values of their builders. The temple does all this without steel. It is a machine of mud, brick, and meaning. As afternoon light softens, the courtyard quiets. The last jars are moved into shade. The scribe presses final marks into clay. A priest washes his hands in a basin, and the water darkens briefly with dust. The temple settles but does not stop. Its records remain. Its stores remain. Its obligations remain. Its God remains present in the minds of the people who will return tomorrow. You look back once more at the thick walls and controlled gates. They seem still, but you know better now. Inside them, the city is being processed. Food becomes offering. Labour becomes order. Belief becomes institution. Memory becomes clay. The ancient engine continues without sound, turning slowly beneath the sleep of Sumer. The temple courtyard fades into evening, and the idea of prediction becomes quieter. Not weaker, quieter. It leaves the public movement of workers, jars, seals, and offerings. It enters the chambers of watchers, scribes, diviners, and people who fear tomorrow. You walk through a narrow passage where the walls hold the day's heat. A lamp burns near a doorway and its smoke stains the plaster above it. The scent is thick with sesame oil, clay dust, wool, and a faint trace of dried herbs. Somewhere nearby, a person coughs softly. Someone else murmurs words too low to follow. The city is preparing for night, but its systems are still awake. This is the hour when prophecy begins to resemble prediction. Not because ancient diviners become modern scientists. That would be too simple, and history dislikes lazy comparisons. But because both prophecy and prediction begin with the same discomfort. The future is coming, and nobody has agreed to explain it. So human beings gather signs. They compare them. They preserve them. They build methods for making uncertainty less shapeless. In Mesopotamia, omen traditions became vast bodies of learned knowledge. Scholars at Yale, Harvard, and the University of Chicago have studied omen texts as disciplined attempts to organize signs and outcomes. A strange birth, an eclipse, an unusual dream, or a mark on a liver could be recorded and interpreted. The methods belonged to a sacred worldview, but they were not careless. They required training, memory, categories, and reference to earlier cases. You enter a room where a diviner sits beside a low table. On the table are water, oil, a small lamp, a tablet, and a stylus. The tools are modest. The ambition is enormous. A question has been asked. Perhaps a ruler wants to know whether a campaign is safe. Perhaps a household fears illness. Perhaps a merchant wonders whether a journey will bring profit or loss. Perhaps the city itself worries about a strange sign in the sky. The diviner does not simply guess. He consults a tradition. He observes a pattern. He speaks within a system. That matters. Prediction becomes socially powerful when it seems repeatable. A random dream may unsettle one person. A dream interpreted by an official specialist may influence a king. A star may shine unnoticed above a shepherd. A star recorded in an omen series may alter ritual action. A pattern becomes power when an institution recognizes it. Modern forecasting works very differently, with mathematics, evidence, instruments, and constant correction. Still, it shares one visible social feature. People trust predictions more when they come from recognized systems. A weather service, a university model, a hospital test, a market analysis, a government report, an artificial intelligence output. The voice changes. The need remains. Tell us what may happen. Tell us early enough to act. A quirky fringe tidbit appears at the edge of the lamp flame. Some modern commentators claim that Mesopotamian omen collections were a primitive form of artificial intelligence because they matched signs to outcomes. That comparison is playful and limited. Ancient diviners did not have machines learning from data. They had tradition, training, analogy, and sacred interpretation. Yet the comparison points towards something real. An omen list is a structured memory of cases. If sign appears, then consequence may follow. If the liver mark lies here, then the answer tends this way. If the eclipse occurs in a certain month, then danger may concern a certain land. It is not modern computation, but it is patterned reasoning. It is the human mind building a lattice for uncertainty. Open scholarly debate continues over how empirical these traditions were. Some historians emphasize religious belief in divine communication. Others note that repeated observation, classification, and record-keeping gave omen scholarship an intellectual discipline of its own. A few scholars argue that Mesopotamian knowledge should not be forced into modern categories of science versus superstition. That last caution feels wise in this room. The ancient world is not a failed version of the modern world. It is itself. Its logic grows from gods, cities, rivers, kings, crops, and fear. You watch the diviner pour oil into water. The oil spreads, circles, divides, and gathers. Light trembles on the surface, making the little pool look like a night sky trapped in a bowl. The diviner observes the shapes. He compares them with remembered patterns. He speaks cautiously, because certainty can be dangerous. A bad prediction can frighten people. A good prediction can make them reckless. A vague prediction can be useful in the way fog is useful to a person avoiding responsibility. Humans have noticed this for a long time. Prediction is never only about truth. It is also about trust. If a specialist says danger is near, people may change behavior. If people change behavior, the predicted outcome may not occur. Then was the prediction wrong, or did it save them? Even modern forecasts face this puzzle. A warning changes the future it describes. The ancient diviner may not phrase it that way, but the social pattern is present. A prophecy can become part of the event. It does not merely look forward. It intervenes. The city outside the room is full of such interventions. Farmers plant by seasonal expectation. Officials distribute by projected need. Temples repair rituals against possible disorder. Kings consult omens before action. Merchants choose timing based on risk. Families seek protection before illness worsens. Prediction becomes woven into conduct. It shapes decisions before reality has fully arrived. This is the deep link between prophecy and technology. Both give humans a way to act in advance. A canal is built before drought. A wall is raised before attack. A record is made before dispute. An omen is read before danger. A forecast is modelled before storm. A modern alert sounds before a system fails. Human intelligence keeps trying to move earlier. Earlier than loss. Earlier than hunger. Earlier than collapse. Earlier than regret. The room grows darker beyond the lamp's small reach. A scribe copies a result onto clay, pressing each sign carefully. The act feels almost bureaucratic, which somehow makes it more powerful. Prophecy becomes paperwork. The sacred future becomes a record. A sign is observed, categorized, stored, and perhaps consulted later. This is how uncertainty becomes archive. A single fear may vanish. A recorded fear becomes part of a system. You think of modern data sets built from countless events. Storm paths, illness cases, purchases, traffic flows, searches, messages, errors, measurements. Each record is small, but together they teach a system to anticipate. The ancient omen archive is not the same thing, yet it shows the older human impulse. Gather enough signs and maybe tomorrow will stop being entirely dark. A sound rises outside the doorway. A cartwheel, perhaps, or the hollow knock of wood against a jar. The city continues with no awareness that you're thinking about artificial intelligence in a room of clay and oil. That is probably for the best. Ancient people had enough to worry about. Still, the comparison lingers softly. Artificial intelligence predicts from patterns in stored information. Ancient divination interpreted signs through inherited frameworks of meaning. One belongs to statistics and computation. The other belongs to sacred interpretation. Both can impress. Both can mislead. Both can become more powerful when people forget the limits behind the answer. That may be the real warning. Not that old prophecy secretly becomes modern technology, but that prediction itself can become an object of worship. When a system answers confidently, humans may bow too quickly. They may forget to ask who built the system. They may forget what evidence entered it. They may forget what it cannot see. They may forget that a pattern is not the same as wisdom. The diviner finishes his observation. The client listens, still and tense. The answer, whatever it is, enters the person's body before it enters action. Should he travel? Should she wait? Should the king proceed? Should the ritual be performed? Prediction touches the nervous system first. Modern people know this too. A diagnosis, a forecast, a score, a warning light, a message that begins with, unfortunately, a graph turning downward. The future arrives early as feeling. Then decisions follow. The lamp burns lower, and the oil smoke curls upward. The clay tablet rests near the table, damp and newly marked. It holds one small attempt to turn uncertainty into shape. Outside, the night covers canals, roofs, courtyards, animals, and sleeping children. The stars above remain bright, but they do not explain themselves. They never have. Humans keep building methods beneath them. Omen, calendar, calculation, model, simulation. Different languages for the same restless plea. Let tomorrow be readable. Let danger give warning. Let pattern appear before pain. In the quiet room, prophecy becomes prediction not by losing mystery but by gaining procedure. It becomes a system of attention. And as the city sleeps, the old question continues to breathe. What happens when people trust the pattern more than the world? The night thins again, and your mind drifts far beyond the mud brick city. Not away from it, through it. The clay streets remain beneath your feet. But another world begins to shimmer behind them. A world of wires, engines, turbines, towers, screens, satellites, and silent rooms filled with machines. At first, the distance seems too great. How could a scribe with a reed stylus belong in the same story as artificial intelligence? How could a temple storehouse whisper toward electric grids and global networks? Yet the bridge is not made of objects. It is made of desire, the desire to command matter, the desire to extend memory, the desire to predict change, the desire to make unseen forces serve human plans. That desire burns in Sumer softly and practically. It burns later in furnaces, engines, circuits, and servers. You stand near an ancient kiln as dawn warms the city edge. The kiln is round, darkened, and stained by years of smoke. A potter checks the heat with the caution of someone who knows fire has opinions. Inside, clay vessels harden into useful permanence. Too little heat, and they remain weak. Too much heat, and they crack. Fire is not simply energy here. It is transformation with danger attached. That is the uneasy rise of modern fire, long before modernity. Every powerful technology begins by asking humans to manage something stronger than comfort. Fire cooks bread and burns houses. Metal strengthens tools and sharpens weapons. Electricity lights rooms and kills through touch. Engines move goods and blacken skies. Artificial intelligence can assist thought and confuse judgment. The pattern is old. Power arrives with a bill. Mainstream historians of technology often trace civilization through energy, materials, and organization. Research discussed at institutions such as Stanford, Oxford, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology emphasizes that technological change depends not only on invention, but on systems of labor, resources, and social adoption. That insight fits the ancient world beautifully. A kiln is not only a hot chamber, It requires fuel, clay, skill, scheduling, demand, and distribution. A canal is not only dug earth, it requires maintenance, authority, cooperation, and conflict. A tablet is not only a record, it requires training, institutions, and trust. Modern technology will follow the same rule, only at larger scale. You listen to the kiln breathe through its opening. The sound is low and uneven, like an animal asleep with one eye open. The potter waits, because timing matters. Fire cannot be rushed without consequence. This feels almost like a lesson the modern world has repeatedly forgotten. The engine age will rush, the electrical age will rush, the digital age will rush faster still. Each age will promise relief from labour, distance, darkness, uncertainty, and delay. Each will also create new forms of dependence. The ancient potter knows, in his humble way, that transformation requires attention. Matter obeys only within limits. Ignore the limit and the vessel breaks. A quirky fringed tidbit curls through the smoke. Some popular theories imagine that ancient texts about divine fire, shining weapons, or heavenly radiance describe forgotten electrical devices. The evidence does not support that claim. Ancient radiance usually belongs to divine glory, ritual imagination, metal brilliance, lightning, celestial bodies, or poetic terror. Still, the fascination reveals a modern instinct. When people read of divine brightness, they imagine technology because modern power often shines. Streetlights, screens, cities seen from orbit, fiber cables blinking in dark rooms. The glow has become our sacred atmosphere. Open scholarly debate continues over how ancient societies understood natural forces through myth, craft, and ritual. Some historians emphasize practical experimentation by craftspeople. Others highlight sacred stories that gave meaning to dangerous transformations. A few scholars examine how technical knowledge moved between workshops, temples, palaces, and households. The debate matters because invention rarely belongs to one place. It travels through hands. The copper worker, potter, scribe, priest, ruler, trader, and labourer all shape the technological world. No single genius stands outside society and invents civilization alone. That is comforting. It is also inconvenient for statues. You move from the kiln toward a metalworking space. The air changes immediately. It smells sharper, hotter, and more mineral. A worker bends near a small furnace, feeding it with fuel and patience. Copper or bronze objects lie nearby, some finished, some rough, some waiting for repair. Metal carries a different kind of authority from clay. Clay records. Metal cuts, fastens, strikes, adorns, and endures. The tool in the hand alters what the hand can do. The weapon in the hand alters what one person can demand from another. Technology never remains innocent once power notices it. That truth grows louder across history. Bronze becomes iron. Muscle becomes animal traction. Animal traction becomes water power. Water power becomes steam. Steam becomes electricity. Electricity becomes computation. Computation becomes prediction at scale. Each step multiplies reach. Each step changes what humans expect from the world. The ancient wish remains underneath. Make the distant near. Make the slow fast. Make the dark visible. Make the future less hidden. Modern engines fulfill those wishes with astonishing force. They also create new shadows. Smoke over industrial cities, extraction from deep earth, labour reorganised around machines, wars enlarged by manufacturing, attention captured by screens, decisions shaped by systems too complex for most users to understand. The old clay warning grows relevant again. A system that promises order may quietly rearrange the people inside it. You look back towards Sumer's temple and archive. The city has already taught that lesson in miniature. The tablet helps memory, but also strengthens control. The canal feeds fields, but also demands labour. The temple distributes goods, but also concentrates authority. The seal protects trust, but also marks exclusion. Modern technology will not escape this pattern simply because it is bright. Brightness is not wisdom. Speed is not mercy. Scale is not justice. These are old truths wearing new clothes. Your mind now moves to electricity, that invisible fire of the modern world. It travels through wires like a domesticated storm. It lights streets, drives machines, powers hospitals, cools food, carries voices, and fills nights with artificial day. To someone from Sumer, it might seem divine. To someone modern, it is a utility bill, which is less poetic but still powerful. Electricity turns command into instant action. A switch is touched. A room changes. A signal is sent. A machine wakes. The gap between intention and result shrinks. That shrinking gap is one of technology's deepest promises. It is also one of its dangers. When action becomes easy, reflection must work harder. Artificial intelligence sharpens the question further. It does not merely move matter, it appears to move through language, judgment, pattern, and choice. It writes, sorts, predicts, imitates, recommends, and answers. It can feel like an oracle without incense, a scribe without sleep, a diviner without a liver bowl. That comparison is poetic, not exact. Modern artificial intelligence is built from mathematics, data, computing power, engineering, and human design. Ancient divination belonged to sacred interpretation, yet both can create a strange emotional effect. The system speaks, and people feel that hidden order is answered. That feeling should be handled gently and carefully. The Sumerian world teaches that signs gain authority through institutions. A tablet mattered because people trusted the scribal system. An omen mattered because people trusted the diviner's training. A seal mattered because people accepted its authority. Modern systems also depend on trust. A model result, a search ranking, a medical score, a financial prediction, a navigation route. Each asks the human to believe that unseen processing has meaning. Sometimes that trust is justified. Sometimes it is partial. Sometimes it is lazy obedience dressed as convenience. The old question returns through modern fire. Who built the system? What does it measure? Who benefits when it speaks? Who carries the cost when it fails? The sun rises higher over the ancient workshop. The kiln smoke thins into the brightening sky. A potter removes a vessel with care and it survives the heat. For a moment, that simple survival feels beautiful. Clay has passed through fire and become stronger. This is the hope inside every technology. That pressure may create resilience. That transformation may serve life. That knowledge may become shelter, food, healing, connection, and light. The darker possibility is never absent. The same fire can harden a jar or burn a city. The same system can feed a household or count it into obedience. The same intelligence can guide or mislead. Sumer does not solve this for you. It only gives you an older place to stand while asking. The modern world may feel new, but its moral weather is ancient. Power gathers. People trust. Systems expand. Warnings arrive softly, often too softly. The kiln cools. The worker wipes ash from his arm. The city continues under the morning sun, unaware of turbines, engines, satellites, and digital minds still far beyond its horizon. Yet inside its canals, tablets, temples, omens, and measured grain, the shape of that future is already faintly visible, not as prophecy carved in one perfect line, as a pattern, a spark held near dry reeds, a useful fire, an uneasy fire. The fire fades from your thoughts, and the clay returns. Not because the mystery has become smaller, because clay is where the mystery can be held without burning the hand. You stand inside a museum room far from ancient Sumer, though the old plane remains in your mind. Glass cases line the walls. Soft lights fall over tablets, seals, votive figures, beads, tools, and fragments of broken stone. The air smells faintly of polished floors, paper labels, and climate control. It is very far from river mud. Yet the objects still carry the dust of another world. A small tablet rests in a case, covered with signs pressed by someone who did not know you would ever exist. The tablet looks quiet, almost shy, but around it, modern scholars still disagree, question, compare, revise, and sometimes sigh deeply into their coffee. That, too, is part of history. The past does not simply reveal itself. It must be reconstructed from fragments, and fragments are stubborn companions. They give enough to invite meaning. They withhold enough to prevent certainty. Mainstream archaeology agrees on many important points. Sumerian cities helped shape early urban life in southern Mesopotamia. Writing emerged from administrative needs before expanding into literature. Law Ritual and scholarship. Temples, households, officials, and rulers participated in complex systems of labour, storage, exchange, and belief. Scholars at Harvard, Yale, Oxford, the University of Chicago, and the University of Pennsylvania have all contributed to the study of these worlds through texts, excavations, museum collections, and historical interpretation. That foundation is strong, yet around the foundation, many questions remain open. How exactly did early cities become so large? How centralized were their institutions? How much power did temples hold at different moments? How did ordinary workers understand their place within the system? How much memory of real environmental trauma lives inside flood traditions? How should myth, ritual, administration, and practical knowledge be read together? These questions do not weaken the story. They make it breathe. A dead past would have no questions left. A living past still resists us. You move slowly along the glass case and see a cylinder seal displayed beside its impression. The carved stone is tiny, but the rolled image is rich with figures. A seated presence, a standing worshipper, an animal, a star or symbol above. The label offers a cautious description, as labels should. It names the period, material, possible scene, and place if known. It doesn't shout that this is proof of cosmic visitors, secret engines, or hidden prophecies of modern machines. The label behaves itself. Still, your mind feels the pull of mystery. The image is compact. The figures are formal. The symbols are old enough to seem almost alien. You can understand why people overread them. Ancient art has a way of making modern certainty feel rude. A quirky fringe tidbit appears here like a visitor who refuses to leave the gift shop. Some popular theories claim Sumerian seals show planets, spaceships, electrical devices, or advanced beings. Specialists generally reject these claims because they depend on ignoring context, chronology, and established iconography. Yet the persistence of such ideas reveals something about modern culture. People are not only asking what the Sumerians knew, they're asking whether modern life has ancient permission. They want technology to feel destined. They want the machine age to have roots in sacred clay. That desire is revealing, even when the claim is weak. Open scholarly debate is more careful and more rewarding. Some historians see Sumerian myths as expressions of divine order and political legitimacy. Others examine them as reflections of economic organization, ecological pressure, and urban complexity. A few scholars explore how ancient narratives preserve cultural memory, not as exact reports, but as emotional maps of social change. The phrase emotional map matters. A myth can be untrue in a literal sense and still preserve a real structure of fear. A flood story may not describe one global event, yet it can preserve the terror of river disaster. A creation story may not explain biological origins, yet it can preserve the reality of labor hierarchy. A divine decree may not describe technology, yet it can preserve the feeling that civilization comes from a power larger than any individual. This is where Sumer truly becomes subtle. It does not hand you a prophecy that says machines will rise. It gives you systems of thought in which order, memory, command, and prediction are sacred concerns. Those concerns are the ancestors of modern technology. The connection is not direct. It is atmospheric, structural, and human. That is harder to market on a loud thumbnail, but far more interesting at night. You step toward another display. A tablet contains a school exercise, perhaps copied by a student learning signs. The marks are uneven. One line seems cramped, another has more confidence. Suddenly the ancient world becomes intimate. A student made mistakes. A teacher corrected them. A young person once sat with clay under the fingers, trying to enter the difficult world of signs. This is not prophecy. It is education. Yet education is how systems reproduce themselves. A society does not pass on technology only by preserving tools. It passes on habits of attention. It teaches children what to count, how to measure, when to trust a sign, how to obey a record, and how to speak in the language of authority. That is perhaps more powerful than any single invention. A tool can be lost. A habit can rebuild tools. You look again at the tablet, and its small, uneven signs become unexpectedly moving. The future of writing depends on hands like that. Not royal hands, Not divine hands, awkward hands, learning hands. Hands that press too hard, they're not hard enough. Hands that carry the system forward without fully understanding what future they serve. Modern technology also depends on such hands. Students learning code, technicians repairing wires, nurses entering records, engineers testing errors, drivers following routes, users training systems with every click. Pause, correction, and choice. The grand machine is built from ordinary gestures. Sumer teaches this with unusual clarity. It was never only kings and gods. It was also the apprentice, but the potter, the canal worker, the brewer, the seal cutter, the woman grinding grain, the accountant, the messenger, the shepherd, and the person sweeping mud from a threshold after flood water withdrew. Historical debate often struggles because the evidence preserves some lives better than others. Kings carved inscriptions. Temples kept records. Officials used seals. Scribes created archives. Ordinary people appear mostly when systems needed to count them. That imbalance is not unique to Sumer. It is one of history's old injustices. The record loves power because power produces records. This is why scholars must read carefully against the grain, looking for the quiet lives hidden inside administrative lines. A rationalist may reveal labour. A debt tablet may reveal vulnerability. A legal document may reveal family strategy. A school tablet may reveal training and discipline. A broken jar may reveal storage, diet, trade, or loss. The fragment asked for humility. It also asked for imagination controlled by evidence. That balance is difficult. Too much caution, and the past becomes dry bones. Too much imagination, and the past becomes a costume for modern fantasy. The best historical storytelling walks between them, slowly, with a lamp held low. You pause at the end of the museum room, where a larger image shows a reconstruction of an ancient city. Ziggurat, canals, houses, boats, fields, and roads appear in careful arrangement. It is only a model. Still, it helps the mind gather what fragments cannot show alone. You see the system from above. Water enters fields. Goods enter storerooms. Records enter archives. People enter labour cycles. Ritual enters public life. Authority enters clay. The city is no longer just a place. It is a pattern of flows. That word feels modern, but the ancient city earns it. Flow of water. Flow of grain. Flow of labour. Flow of symbols. Flow of trust. Flow of fear. Modern technology is also a pattern of flows. Electricity, data, money, images, commands, attention, influence, and desire. The difference in scale is immense. The underlying question is familiar. How does a society organize what moves through it? What does it store? What does it ignore? What does it worship? What does it call progress? The scholars still debate Sumer because Sumer sits near the beginning of so many later habits. Not the beginning of humanity. Not the beginning of intelligence. Not the beginning of beauty or violence or love. But near the beginning of large recorded urban systems that still feel uncannily close. The evidence gives enough to trust the outline. The gaps leave enough to keep the night open. You step away from the glass. The tablet remains under its soft museum light, neither speaking nor silent. It has survived flood, burial, excavation, transport, cataloguing, interpretation, and modern curiosity. It has become evidence. It has also become a mirror. In it you see ancient Sumer. You also see the modern desire to be explained by origins. Perhaps that is why the clay feels prophetic. Not because it tells us exactly what would come, because it shows what was already beginning. The urge to record, the need to predict, the power of systems, the danger of forgetting the human body inside the count. The debate is not finished. The clay has not said everything. And perhaps that is why you keep listening. The museum light fades from your mind, and the old city returns under a darker sky. Not a dramatic sky, a quiet one, the kind that seems to lower itself gently over walls, canals, courtyards, and sleeping animals. You stand near a tablet room where the air has cooled after the long day. Outside, a reed screen stirs faintly in the wind. Inside, clay rests on shelves like stored breath. The signs remain still, yet the warning inside them begins to feel more alive. Not a warning against tools alone. Not a warning against writing, counting, measuring, building, or predicting. Those acts have helped humans survive. They have given bread, memory, shelter, medicine, navigation, and light. The forgotten warning in the clay is more delicate than fear of invention. It is the warning that systems can become larger than the people who made them. A canal begins as a way to guide water. Then the canal demands labour, maintenance, rules, and authority. A tablet begins as a way to remember grain. Then the tablet begins to define who owes, who owns, who receives, and who must wait. A temple begins as a place of offering. Then the temple gathers food, status, employment, law, and trust. A prophecy begins as a search for meaning. Then prediction begins to shape action before life has spoken for itself. Each system helps. Each system asks. Each system takes a little room inside human life. Mainstream historians studying early Mesopotamia often emphasize this complexity. Research traditions at Yale, Oxford, the University of Chicago, and the University of Pennsylvania show that Sumerian cities were not simple stories of progress or oppression. They were dense arrangements of survival, belief, innovation, inequality, cooperation, and control. That is what makes them feel so modern. They do not offer an easy moral. They offer a structure, and structures are harder to escape than villains. You walk past a sealed jar near the archive wall. The seal impression is clear. Its tiny figures pressed into clay with confident authority. Once, that mark protected contents from theft or tampering. It created trust. It also said that access belonged to some, not all. The same mark that reassured one person excluded another. Technology often carries this double nature. A lock protects. A lock denies. A record preserves. A record exposes. A prediction prepares. A prediction frightens. A machine relieves labour. A machine reorganizes labour under new demands. The clay warning is not that invention is evil. That would be far too simple and also unfair to pottery. The warning is that every invention enters a social world already shaped by power. Once there, it does not remain innocent. A quirky fringe tidbit wanders in from the edge of modern myth. Some people believe the Sumerians left direct warnings about future artificial intelligence, global networks, or hidden machines. The evidence does not support such claims. Ancient texts speak in the language of gods, kings, omens, cities, floods, and cosmic order. Yet the impulse behind the fringe reading is revealing. People sense that modern technology has become almost mythic. It surrounds them invisibly. It speaks through devices. It predicts desires. It records movements. It offers convenience while quietly rearranging attention. So they search the ancient world for an earlier warning, as if clay might explain the glow. Perhaps that search is misguided in detail, but not entirely wrong in feeling. The Sumerian record does contain a warning. It asks what happens when order becomes sacred enough that people stop questioning it. Open scholarly debate continues over whether early urban systems should be understood mainly as engines of cooperation or mechanisms of hierarchy. Some scholars emphasize shared labour, irrigation, storage, ritual life, and the benefits of collective organisation. Others highlight inequality, administrative control, elite authority, and the burdens placed on workers. A few argue that both grew together, because early cities solved real problems while creating new dependencies. That balanced view feels honest. A city feeds people and counts them. A temple shelters meaning and concentrates wealth. A record protects rights and strengthens authority. A system saves and binds. You step into the street where moonlight rests on packed earth. The city is asleep but not empty. A dog lies near a doorway. A jar cools beside a wall. A child turns on a reed map, chasing a dream no tablet will record. The quiet lives are the ones the warning tries to protect, because systems do not easily see softness. They see units. They see labour. They see time. They see output. They see signs that can be stored. A sleeping child is not easily reduced to a ration entry, though a ration may keep that child alive. A grieving worker is not fully described by a name on a list, though the list may prove his place. A woman grinding grain before sunrise is more than labour, though the system may record only the grain. This is the ancient imbalance that modern technology intensifies. Data can count more than clay ever could. It can follow the body through streets, screens, purchases, health measures, choices, mistakes, and sleep. It can help doctors, planners, farmers, teachers, and families. It can also flatten a person into patterns useful to someone else. The clay tablet is slow, modern data is fast, but the moral question remains old. What happens to the soul of a person when the system sees only the part it can measure? The word soul belongs carefully here, not as doctrine, but as tenderness. It points to what escapes the count. Ancient Sumer knew that not everything important fit into administration. Its hymns, myths, laments, and rituals show that grief, awe, fear, devotion, and longing also mattered. A civilization that counted barley also sang to gods. A culture that recorded labour also imagined cosmic sorrow. This matters because it means the clay world was never only bureaucratic. It was human. The warning comes from that fullness. Do not let the record become the whole reality. Do not let the system mistake its map for the living city. Do not let prediction replace humility before what cannot be known. A breeze moves through the street, carrying the faint smell of water. You think of the flood again, not as an event to prove, but as a memory of limits. Water breaks walls, fire cracks vessels, kings die, archives burn, systems fail. The ancient world did not need modern collapse to understand fragility. It lived beside it. That may be why Sumerian traditions place order and disaster so close together. Kingship descends, cities rise, flood comes, cities rise again. The pattern is not confidence without fear. It is rebuilding after warning. Modern technology often speaks as if failure is an error to be engineered away. The ancient clay suggests something more humble. Failure is part of the world that systems must respect. A canal must be cleared because silt returns. A wall must be repaired because weather works slowly. A record must be checked because people make mistakes. A prediction must be held lightly because signs deceive. Maintenance is the ethic hidden beneath civilization. Without maintenance, every marvel becomes debris. This is not the most glamorous prophecy, but it may be the truest. The future will not be saved only by brilliant invention. It will be saved if it is saved by attention, repair, restraint, and care. The old city knows this in its bones. Its bricks crumble unless remade. Its canals choke unless cleared. Its tablets survive only when handled properly or buried by accident. Its gods require offerings. Its people require food. Nothing holds forever without tending. You pause beside the archive doorway. Inside, the tablets sleep. Outside, the stars shine with their old impersonality. They do not congratulate the city on its systems. They do not condemn it either. They simply remain bright and distant, while humans build beneath them. Perhaps the warning in the clay is not spoken as a command. Perhaps it is a question repeated across every age that learns to measure itself. What will you do with the power to record? What will you do with the power to predict? What will you do with the power to organize other lives? And when your systems grow strong, will you still remember the human hand that pressed the first mark? The city offers no final answer. It gives you the tablet, the canal, the seal, the temple, the worker, the flood, the star. It lets them lie together in the night, and in their quiet arrangement, the warning remains gentle, patient, and unfinished. The night grows deep, and the city seems to breathe more slowly. You stand where the outer wall meets the open plain, with Sumer behind you and darkness ahead. The air is cool against your face. It carries the smell of river mud, dry reeds, ashes, animals, and distant cooking fires fading into sleep. Above the roofs, the temple platform is only a dark shape against the stars. The canals glimmer faintly, thin lines of reflected sky drawn through the earth. Nothing announces itself as an ending. Ancient places rarely end cleanly. They recede, they blur, they leave fragments in the hand and questions in the mind. The story not yet complete is not a secret hidden in one tablet. It's not a prophecy waiting to be translated by the perfect reader. It is the larger pattern left behind by cities, records, rituals, floods, workers, rulers, and watchers of the sky. You have walked among signs. You have seen memory pressed into clay. You have felt how a city becomes a system, and how a system becomes almost alive. Now the question softens. What remains when certainty falls away? Mainstream scholarship gives firm ground where it can. Archaeologists confirm that Sumerian cities helped shape early writing, administration, urban complexity, and learned traditions. Historians at major institutions such as Oxford, Yale, Stanford, and the University of Chicago continue to study Mesopotamia as one of the great foundations of recorded civilization. They do not need to claim that Sumer predicted modern technology in a literal way. The evidence asks for a quieter reading, a more human one. Sumer did not draw electric circuits on temple walls. It did not leave blueprints for satellites beneath ziggurats' steps. It did not describe artificial intelligence in the language of modern engineering. But it did preserve older questions that modern technology has made urgent again. How do humans store memory outside the body? How do they predict what has not yet happened? How do they organize labor, time, water, food, belief, and authority? How do they decide which signs deserve trust? How do they keep power from becoming invisible? The answers remain unsettled. That is why the clay still feels alive. A quirky tidbit lingers in the dark like a small, stubborn lamp. Some people continue to search Sumerian tablets for hidden machines, lost planets, forbidden sciences, and exact forecasts of the modern world. Most of those claims do not survive careful historical reading, yet they reveal a hunger that deserves gentler attention. People want the modern age to feel less lonely. They want its strange machines to belong to an older story. They want to know whether someone saw this coming. Perhaps no ancient scribe saw your glowing screen, your artificial intelligence tools, your satellites, your data centers, or your sleepless networks. But ancient scribes did see something. They saw that signs could rule. They saw that records could outlive people. They saw that prediction could guide kings. They saw that measurement could turn the world into obligation. They saw that systems could feed cities and burden workers at the same time. That is enough. Open scholarly debate continues around how much ancient myth preserves memory, ideology, ritual theology, or social anxiety. Some researchers read the texts as sacred literature shaped by temple and royal power. Others see them as reflections of environment, labor, and political change. A few scholars carefully explore how myth can preserve emotional truths without preserving literal events. The debate matters because the past is not a single locked box. It is a field of fragments under changing light. Step closer and one pattern appears. Step back and another rises. In the quiet, your mind returns to the first clay marks. A sheep counted, a jar sealed, a field measured, a worker named. These are modest things, yet they begin a transformation that still surrounds you. The modern world is built from marks that stand for things. Numbers stand for money. Codes stand for identity. Files stand for memory. Models stand for possible futures. Maps stand for territories. Profiles stand for people. But no sign is ever the whole reality. That may be the final tenderness Sumer offers. A tablet can record grain, but not hunger fully. A law can record judgment, but not every wound. A calendar can record time, but not how a night feels to someone waiting. A data system can record behavior, but not the full inward weather of a human life. The ancient clay reminds you to respect the distance between sign and soul. The stars above the plain continue their patient shining. They have watched canals dry, walls crumble, languages change, and empires pass into footnotes. They have watched archaeologists kneel in dust with brushes and notebooks. They have watched museum visitors lean over glass, searching for a face inside a wedge-shaped mark. They have watched modern cities grow bright enough to hide them from view. Still, they are there. The same sky that taught ancient observers to count cycles now looks down on networks too vast for any single mind. It is possible that modern technology has not broken from the ancient world as completely as it thinks. Perhaps it has only accelerated old desires. The desire to remember, the desire to foresee, the desire to command distance, the desire to make nature answer, the desire to build systems that promise safety, abundance, and control. Sumer stands near the beginning of that recorded desire. Not the absolute beginning. No culture owns the beginning of humanity, but Sumer gives us early clay evidence of the dream becoming organized. And once organized, the dream grows powerful. You listen to the city behind you. A roof beam creaks. A sleeping animal stirs, water slides softly through a canal. Somewhere, a tablet lies in darkness, holding a record no living voice now remembers making. That is the strange mercy of history. What was ordinary becomes evidence. What was temporary becomes ancient. What was local becomes part of a human story that crosses oceans and centuries. You do not need to force a hard conclusion onto it. The better ending is softer. Perhaps Sumerian prophecy did not reveal the rise of modern technology as a prediction. Perhaps it revealed it as a pattern of mind, a way of seeing the world as readable, measurable, recordable, and adjustable, a way of trusting signs, a way of fearing disorder, a way of building systems against uncertainty. And perhaps the most important part was never the technology itself. Perhaps it was the warning that every system must remain answerable to the fragile lives inside it. The plain opens beyond the city. Darkness lies over the fields, but it is not empty. Seeds wait beneath soil. Silt rests in canals. Clay waits in old walls. Stars wait in their slow courses. The story remains unfinished because human beings are still writing it, not only with styluses but with circuits, codes, choices, and quiet acts of care. The last image is simple. A hand presses a mark into clay. Another hand touches a screen in a dark room thousands of years later. Between them stretches a long corridor of memory. No voice explains it completely. No tablet closes the question. And perhaps, beneath the calm stars, the story is not yet complete. Now let the old city grow softer in your mind. Let its walls lose their sharp edges. Let the canals become silver threads beneath a sky that asks nothing from you. The scribes have set down their styluses. The workers have laid aside their baskets. The temple lamps burn low, and the last smoke curls upward with no hurry. You do not need to solve the clay tonight. You do not need to decide whether every sign was warning, memory, prayer, or dream. Some mysteries are kinder when left unfastened. Let the ancient tablets rest on their shelves. Let the flood silt settle. Let the stars keep their distance, bright and patient above the sleeping plain. The world has always been larger than the systems built to explain it. That can be frightening, but it can also be restful. You are allowed to drift beyond the questions now, beyond the seals and records, beyond the kings, canals, temples, and measured fields. Only the quiet remains. A warm darkness, a slow river, a city made of clay and memory, breathing under the moon. And somewhere far beneath the dust, a small tablet waits without urgency. It has waited through empires, storms, and sleeping centuries. It can wait a little longer, so let your thoughts loosen. Let the old words fade. Let the night carry you gently away from the ziggurat, across the fields, beyond the reeds, into a soft and dreamless silence. End of script. Good night.